Welcome to GenX Adulting, and today we have author Anthony Dyer with us. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, guys. It's a privilege and honor to be here. Thank you.
We're so happy to have you. And our first question is always, what year were you born?
I was born in 1982.
You are a millennial.
Yeah, I was actually, to be honest with you, I had to look up the gates for like the timelines, and it was like Gen X is what 65 to 80 is what I saw. Then it was like 82. It's like you're sort of that bridge era or whatnot. So
Yep.
what do they call it? A Xennial. So
Yep. You're
Mm.
yeah, you're a Xennial. You're a
yeah,
Xennial. So
Xennial. That's right. Yeah,
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 because I feel like the people that were born like 81, 82, 83 can almost relate a little more to the Gen X childhood than maybe the younger millennial childhood. So it's almost like you guys, like that's why you're the Xennials, because you're kind of that bridge and you have
yeah.
your foot in both areas.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think too, like especially raising my daughter and stuff, and to see what kids are into and how they play these days, and I always encourage her to, get outside, see the trees, see the dirt, get dirty, have fun.
Absolutely. I think they call that in real life, like doing things in real life, or they'll say go out and touch grass just to get some perspective
Oh
because
yeah,
their life is so it's based so much on technology that just to get that balance of and you see it when people start to lose it online when they're dropping comments that they would never say to someone's
oh yeah.
face. It's like you need to get outside and get some real life.
Yeah. It's sort of ironic too, because my job now, I do the flight simulator. This basically this thing that moves and you recreate these moments in flight and emergencies and threats, etc. And basically, I get to play a $80 million like video game and help train our future air commandos. And but at the same time, I'm sort of contradicting myself, telling my daughter, hey, like this isn't what's going to be forever. Like go outside, see the earth, play sports, have fun, actually make friends like in person, so I'm big on that sort of
Absolutely.
stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. A healthy balance. Now, where were you born?
So I was born in a small town called Sylva, North Carolina, deep in rugged Appalachia, I believe they call it. So
Okay. And so how far back do the generations go? Was it your grandparents, your great grandparents? Like who settled there?
yeah, so it was basically what was cool about the book too is I got to go back and sort of look of where that side of my family comes from, or both sides really. But so it started with Mary Dyer in Boston, and she was the Quaker martyr, if you will. And basically, once that happened, there was the huge, I guess, like land rush, and
Yeah.
basically that people went to Rutherford and then sort of the foothills. Then they moved to deep in Appalachia, out western North Carolina, pretty much right after that type thing, or maybe 100 years after, something like that. So
So when you say she was a Quaker martyr, what does that mean?
yeah, so like basically at the time in Boston, like there was this Protestant rule, right, and they weren't letting like the Quakers part of the colonies, from my understanding of it. And then she was like, you know what, like this should be like basically freedom of religion is what she was getting at. Like we deserve as much rights as anybody for what we believe. So they
Okay.
in the end they hanged her, for her beliefs. So
I was gonna say
Did
that's
they
a
really?
yeah, that's a pretty bold take back then. The
oh yeah,
Quakers were super strict, conservative.
So she left the Boston area and came down to Appalachia to settle? Or is
no
that
no
how it
so
went?
no so basically like her offsprings and family down the lines, that
Okay.
you see this huge like land grab sort of in the foothills of North Carolina and like southern or Virginia type area, and Appalachia in general. Then they moved even further west to where my parents grew up in western North Carolina.
Okay, but she ended up getting hanged for her beliefs?
She did, yeah, and I found out there's actually a statue up there. I want to go see it one day of hers. So
Oh,
No
cool.
way.
yeah,
Where's the statue?
in Boston, Massachusetts.
Is that where she was hung?
Y- yeah. She was tried and hung there. So
Was it mostly women? Do you know?
to be honest with you, I don't know. I think it was like she stood up for the Quaker, movement and all. You know what I mean? Versus the Protestants basically not letting them into the colonies, not getting the same advantages as the Protestant believers would.
So then after she was tried and hung, so I assume she was married because she had children, correct?
Yeah. She was married, and then yeah, and then basically I don't remember if they were together in the end, but there was something happened with her husband. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I know there was offspring and children and stuff like that eventually, and then throughout that family line, that Dyer name, it went all the way down to where we are in North Carolina. So
That's amazing. So that's your paternal side, correct?
yeah, yeah, my dad's side, yeah.
Mhm.
So then, do you know anything about your mom's side?
Yeah, so my mom's as far as like that I guess bloodline would be me halfy like the Scott Irish, and they married Queen, and basically Appalachia is this melting pot of like you have the Scott Irish, like the that version of it. Then there's like some German ancestry there, not in my bloodline, but then English. And then you have like the Eastern Band of Cherokee Nation. So you have this one big melting pot of Appalachia. It's different ideas, beautiful people, and a lot of good food and good folklore and good stories.
Now, do you know if your paternal and maternal grandparents did they live in the same town?
They did, yes. So it was Waynesville, North Carolina, and so, Haywood County, if you will. And then my grandfather Mahaffey married a lady with the last name Queen. And I don't know much about sort of that side of it, but I do know my great grandmother was Willie York, which was first cousins with Alvin York, which was the World War One guy and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, and so how many people were in that town? What was the population?
oh man, it's a small town. It's a few thousand, something like that. And even like Sylva to this day, it's probably the biggest I've seen it, and still a few thousand ish people. Nothing like
Okay.
200,000 or nothing like that.
I looked it up, man. I bet that was pretty nice growing up there. It's beautiful in that part of the world.
Yeah, yeah. What I liked about it too was, if I wanted to go fishing, I would go walk a half mile down the road to the Tuckasegee River, for example. And just the summers were always great. Just bicycling everywhere in the mountains with my friends, and you didn't call your neighbor. You walked over there or ran over there, and hey, what are you doing? Knocked on the door and got permission to play, and so it was a very very tight knit community. And it's one of the things where I tell people like everybody knows everybody's business, and that can either be a good thing or a bad thing growing up in these small areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What's the nearest city to you? Is it Asheville?
Yeah, Asheville's about an hour west of us, and Asheville's a fun little town in itself, and
Yeah.
it's grown a lot too. And one time I
Yes.
was up there growing up, and I remember they had this bumper sticker. I still want to get one. It says "Keep Asheville Weird," because
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You know what's funny? I'm from Portland, Oregon, and
yeah.
I grew up with that. There was a bumper sticker, "Keep Portland Weird." It's the same
Yeah.
type of vibe. I think Portland's gotten a little too weird, but yes, I like the vibe.
Asheville's getting close.
I don't know. I don't know. We were there. Gosh, that was like
Well, we drove. I'm
almost
curious.
10 years ago.
We drove from Atlanta Metro up to Asheville. I wonder if I know we had to go sort of near where you were because we went up into the Smoky Mountains and somehow meander our way around
Yeah,
over to
yeah. I would say you did. You probably went up, through the Macon County, like the was it the north tip of Georgia that touches the north tip or south tip of North Carolina.
Mhm.
You go through there and you start seeing all those waterfalls and stuff like that. So I'd say
Yeah.
you
It's
probably got close. Yeah,
it's absolutely beautiful. Now, do you know how your parents met?
I do. Yeah, they were together in Tuscola High School in Waynesville. And the only thing I know about the story is my mom would remind the whole family actually that they were at the gym, the Tuscola gym, and my dad's there, and my mom comes up to him and he says, "What are you looking at?" This very 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 blunt, like, "What are you looking at?" And that's pretty much at that point. I know so what are they, about a year apart, give or take. So my
Okay.
dad had joined the Air Force and actually got married later when my mom got out of high school and stuff like that, and he spent 15 months in the Philippines, and then that was when he was stationed homeside. His home base would be a Tampa MacDill Air Force Base, which is it influenced a lot of why I joined the Air Force and the quality of life he'd tell me about and stuff like that.
Okay, so when he joined the Air Force, was she still in high school? Was she a little younger than him?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She was about a year younger, approximately a year, and basically, there was some waiting there and stuff like that, and he joined the Air Force, and I think he did tech school and everything, get all his training done, and then once she got out of high school the next year, they got married. And there's a picture in the snow. I know they got married in the snow, and he was in his blues, little two stripe, airman blues. So it was always a cool picture to look at.
Now, was that when he got back from the Philippines?
Yeah, yeah, I would say yeah that timeline would add up to, was it 15 months or so? Yeah.
And then, you said he was in Tampa. Did she end up moving down there? Did they live down
Yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah. They end up basically once he got back from overseas, and like that was his home base, was MacDill, Tampa Air Force, or MacDill Air Force Base. They lived there for I don't know, 3 to 4 years after that, And then he got out. And this is way before I was born too.
Do you know if your mom worked during that time?
She did not work during that time. Actually, my mom didn't start working until like I was a kid when she was getting her degree, her teaching degree at Western Carolina, and I remember
Okay.
even one of the classes, they have to do like these scenario type things, and they brought me in as a kid, and I was, man, 5 or 6 or something like that, and this Dr. Gentry, I'll never forget the professor's name, and they asked me something about like where does ketchup come from, for example, right? And I think I said something dumb like, "Oh, that comes from blood," just being wise, But yeah, remember my mom. She would always like, no matter what, she'd be a mom and a student, and always get her work done, and had a
Mm.
really strong work ethic. And I think she ended up doing like 30 plus years of teaching like first grade there, Fairview Elementary School.
Oh, wow.
Wow. So do you know, was she like right out of high school when they got married, like 18, 19?
Yeah, she was young, like right at 18, and then yeah, so
And
it
then
was.
how long were they married before are you the oldest?
I'm the youngest, so my
Okay.
sister, she's a 4 years older than me.
So do you know how long they were married before your sister was born?
Man, I can't do the math on it right now, but yeah. See, my sister's 40. Was she 48? Yeah, so I don't have to do the math on that, but
Was she born in Tampa?
no, she was. They had already got out and moved back to Sylva,
Okay.
North Carolina,
I
which is
think
the
they
town
Okay.
he
Okay.
settled down.
So
Yeah,
he served like 4 or 5 years in
yeah, yeah,
Tampa.
yeah.
Then
Close
they
to her.
moved back. Then they
Yeah,
started their family.
yeah, yeah. And at that point, my dad was working at the what was then the telephone, like Comtel or something like that, telephone company.
Okay. So he was no longer in the Air Force and had transferred to a civilian job, basically?
Correct. Yeah, he got his GI Bill ish, whatever version of that was then, and
Mhm.
got his 2 year degree, and then in the end ended up doing the phone company for a while, and then worked at the powerhouse, like up at the Nantahala powerhouse, where back home there's a lot of water turbines, which was how they generate electricity back home. So
Okay. And so then it was your sister and you? Is it just the two of you?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then growing up, I know you said you grew up in a small town and you were fishing and just get on your bike and go knock on friends' houses, which sounds like a very actually Gen X childhood. So
Yeah.
that's why I say I think
Yeah.
the older millennials had very similar childhoods. But it doesn't sound like you were probably latchkey, right? Because was your mom home during all that time?
Yeah, yeah, she was home for a majority of that time, and then it was the typical things that would happen. I'd get in some sort of trouble, right, and wait till your dad gets home, and sure enough, when
Yeah.
dad get home, I knew it was coming. But yeah, yes. So at that point, like until I got older, like she was with us all summer type thing as well.
Was your house the type of house where like everyone came over, like all your friends and stuff? Was it one of those houses, or were you pretty much gone and then just came back like when it was getting dark?
Yeah, I remember playing in the woods till it got dark, and then we'd all just come home. And there's different sort of folklore and sayings like you don't whistle at night in Appalachia, and it's actually I think there's a book called that too. But yeah, man. So we'd always get home, one way or another, right before the sun came down, no matter how far I thought I was away from home.
So,
I
gro
got to ask,
yeah,
what is that folklore? I've
I
never
was
heard of
about to
that.
ask, you haven't?
No,
Oh,
no.
that's all
Have you?
yeah. Oh, yeah, I've heard about you don't, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, you don't like you said, you don't whistle, you don't look. Like, if you hear something,
Yeah.
you don't look, you just keep going. Am I accurate in that?
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty accurate. So the way it goes is like if you're in the woods especially by yourself or just a few people, like don't whistle at night, because you may hear something whistle back, and then you're basically inviting whatever
Mm.
entity that is to you. You know what I mean? And there's all kinds of stories. Like there's even like the Appalachian skinwalkers, and I married my wife in New Mexico, which she's from the Navajo Nation. So I see a lot of commonalities. Even they don't whistle at night, and they have their version of skinwalkers, which is pretty world famous at this point. But yeah, so there's some commonalities there, but there's a lot of folklore, and there was little things too that I don't know the science behind it, but my grandfather would show me. You ever heard of water dowsing?
What is
Like
it?
it's called water dowsing. I actually heard this guy talking about it
No.
on the Sean Ryan show. But you get like basically these two rods, you bend them at 90 degrees, and I would use like copper, clothes hangers, right? And my grandfather taught me where you could walk, and when they cross, it's pretty apparent, like this X. And whether you exit when the X crosses, you look down. That's where there's a water table underneath
Oh,
the
okay.
ground there. So there's even a society where people pay people to go find water using that
Yeah.
that method. We even called it, I think, witching water at one point because people don't really truly understand how it works.
No, does it have to be a certain type of metal? Did you say copper?
Man, I use I've seen people use copper, like the copper wires. Some people even buy rods online, and you can use, I believe, a willow, like a willow type branch. That, but it has to be
Yeah.
shaped in like a wishbone, if you will, where it'll point down.
Yeah. Wow. So growing up there, did everyone, I know you said it's folklore, but are you raised to does everyone believe it? Would
Oh
you
yeah, man.
say living there?
Yeah, they believe it as much as me and you just talking right here, man. It's that
Okay.
like it's a
Okay.
real thing.
I know someone who um they were drilling for water. They bought property. They were drilling for water, and they were down 100 feet, couldn't hit water. They and they tried different spots. They brought someone out and
Yeah.
did that, and they found water. It is somewhat witchcraft, but
No, I think that's scientific, but it's more
no, it's
like,
not scientific,
you
but
don't
it
think
worked
so?
out.
I don't know. I mean, the whole skinwalkers and the entity and all that. Did you guys ever hear of something happen? Like, did anyone go missing, or did you ever hear anything where something would happen to even tourists or visitors or anything?
The only thing I've heard with stuff like that is the Appalachian Trail, which I think people start that in I don't know, maybe New York or something like that, and they come all the way down to the part of Georgia I was telling you about. And there's people, all the time go missing and vanish, and they don't know what happened to them. But it could be even nature. Who knows? And but yeah, I think there's a lot of folklore, but there is, where science and folklore can live in the same world, and I think there's ley lines and stuff. I've tried to understand the water dowsing thing myself, and I even heard, I think it was Randall Carson talk about it, how, on the Sean Ryan show, where he, same sort of scenario, they couldn't find the water, then they get this guy there in the water, and it was real violent when he had him do it, like the X crossing, like you ever caught like a big fish, that initial bite. It sort of
Yeah,
feels like that, and that's how you know you got it. But yeah, there's something to it maybe that we don't understand, and some of that folklore, but I think there's also some very much truth to that too.
I would assume, man, I bet you grew up with a ton of folklore because it's
Oh yeah.
alive and well today, right? So growing up in it, I'm sure you heard all types of stories. Probably scared the shit out of you half the time.
Yeah, like there was guys, like my dad would tell me, there's guys that could like pray and they could take the sting out of a burn. I don't know if you guys ever heard that. Like they put
Mm.
hands on you to take the sting out of a burn. There's guys that could like whisper to your hands if you had warts, and the warts would disappear. And people believe that one like stone cold, man.
Yeah.
No, I believe that. When I'm thinking the music too, right? There's great music that
Yeah, the
comes
A lot
out
of
banjo.
of where
bluegrass.
you
Oh
grew
yeah.
up, right?
Yeah, a lot of banjo, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
old moonshiner stories and stuff like that. And I actually got a clip of my one of my I think it was Evelyn Dyer. She was my great grandmother, and I can send you this news clip. It's pretty cool, but it says somewhere in Scotts Creek where she got caught selling liquor during like 1929, which I'm assuming that was prohibition-ish, right? And
Yeah.
like they're all selling moonshine, and back then it's people were poor there, man. That's a week's worth of food or whatnot. So a lot of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
this sort of defiant attitude, and there's legendary moonshiners like Popcorn Sutton. You may have heard about stuff like that, but yeah, just very defiant. They live by your own rules, but be ready to pay for the consequences if it happens. So,
Well, and it's probably very much still like that, right? Like the
oh, yeah,
roots go like that. So
you're
that's
good.
so interesting going all the way back. So you have moonshiners in your family. Do you have
Oh, yeah.
anyone who played music, like bluegrass or anything?
Not off the top of my head, I can't remember, but like you definitely, like, even if you go back home today, there's guys that play the banjo. Actually, one of my friends that I served in the Air Force with, he moved from Wisconsin after he got out, and he was living near Asheville before the hurricane hit. Was it Helene?
Mm.
And he moved back towards Charlotte, but he's a really good banjo player. He sort of, took his own stuff and then fell in love with it again in Appalachia. So
That's amazing. So growing up there, would you call yourself an outdoorsman because that was just your childhood was outside doing all the things?
yeah, I would say more outdoors than indoors. No, I was never much of a hunter, or anything like that. My dad would always say the only hunting I'll do is a place to fish, and we both sort of, went towards the native brown trout fishing and stuff like that with Rapala lures and the swift waters up all the way up in the Nantahala Gorge, stuff like that. So very much so in that aspect, yeah.
Did you guys do a lot of camping?
Yeah, we went camping. I remember there was this place called Deep Creek Campground, and there's all kinds of historical like Cherokee stuff there too. Have you ever heard the story of like Chief Solly? You know, that's where the Unto These Hills, that drama they do in Cherokee there is, it's about that. You know, basically the story goes he was a this Cherokee chief, right, who basically him and his people hid out onto these hills, and he hid out in a cave, and there's actually a cave near that campground that people can see, and where some people know where it's at anyways. And he basically, instead of doing the Trail of Tears, moving out to Oklahoma, a certain group of Cherokee stayed, and he gave his life for that. Which that's the story of Chief Solly, which is where you get onto these hills.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. That is really, really cool. I mean, it's just like Brian said, we've driven through there, through that area, and I'm just mesmerized by the beauty of it. And I can't imagine growing up there. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, which people go up to Oregon, Washington, and they're amazed at how beautiful it is, which I knew it was nice, but I
Yeah.
don't think you realize how special where you grow up when you grow up somewhere like that is until you leave. And then you're like, oh, I really did grow up in this magnificent part of the country. And where you grew up feels like that to me. But growing up there, were you aware of how special it was?
I took it for granted, to be honest with you. I speaking of Washington, there the roots. There's the roots and wings part of my story. There's the roots where, like, I grew up in this small town community. These sort of morals that my family gave me, and my beliefs, what I truly believe in and hold dear. And then I wanted wings, and that's when the Air Force let me see the world. And part of that you know journey would be going to SEER school up in was it Fairchild, Washington, up there, and you get a little bit of time off where you get to see downtown and stuff like that. And there was parts of that town, and even like Tacoma, even and Seattle, there's parts that remind me of like either Asheville or like my little small town called Sylva. So it
Yeah.
somehow always has a way, to remind me of that place, no matter how far I go.
Yeah, definitely. So growing up like in elementary school, and did you call it junior high or middle school?
We just called it middle school. So it was back then it was kindergarten through eighth grade, and the seventh and eighth, but it was all in the same area for
We're in the
that.
same, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you involved with sports or art or clubs or theater? Like, what were your interests?
Definitely basketball. I loved basketball since a young age. North Carolina's the home of Michael Jordan. I think down near
Hmm.
Wilmington and stuff like that. And I was into NASCAR when I was younger, but I sort of grew away from that. And what's ironic about that is I tell people the gunship, the AC-130, right? It's all based on the pylon turn, this left-hand turn, or over this orbiting this target area. And
Yeah.
so it's like NASCAR with guns. I tell people they get a kick out of that. Yeah, best way to describe that. But
I
yeah, it was
never
a
thought about that growing up in North Carolina. So basketball and NASCAR, but basketball is interesting because you got Duke and UNC
oh yeah.
in
Yeah.
rich histories, right? So that's interesting. You kind of gravitated towards that.
I make a joke in the book too about how I've seen you know divorces happen over Duke and UNC, that
Mhm.
rivalry.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then aviation too, right? Kitty Hawk and the Wright brothers. It's all started there. So we
That's
like to
true.
claim all three anyway.
yeah.
So
Uh,
during that time, when did your mom start going back to school to become a teacher? Was it during your elementary, middle school years?
yeah. It was so I was 5 or 6 that moment I was telling you about earlier with her. We'll call them practicals or whatever they call them now.
Hmm.
And then she started teaching naturally at the school I was at, man. And I just remember I would get in trouble, and you know how that goes. If your mom
Yeah.
works in school, the teachers would take me to her first for whatever reason. But I think it's
Uh,
because they knew the embarrassment of it, and I was going to catch it worse from mom before I got the stiff
Yeah.
hand of the principal. Yeah, yeah.
So
that's
that
funny.
probably kept, I mean, were you already pretty much kept in line in school? Did you have a history of acting out, or did because everyone has eyes on you once your mom's working there,
Uh,
right?
oh yeah, yeah. And I mean I was dumb, honestly. I would do a lot of stupid things. Like I remember me and my buddies, we developed this basically scheme to get people out of 50 cents or something, and we didn't know what shooting craps was, like how they call it in the casino. We were so dumb. Oh yeah, we're gonna shoot crabs, and we'd do the dice, and no matter what they'd roll, we'd manipulate to be like, oh yeah, well yo, it's the yeah, stupid things like that. I got there a couple of times community service, a couple of times, but yeah, mom was always she never gave up on me though. So
Oh my gosh. So were you doing that in school?
was I in school doing that? Yeah, I
No,
was.
yeah, the like on lunch.
Yeah, you know how you do outside and like recess and stuff like
Yeah,
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you
You're
get a couple of dice, find a wall,
rolling
you're
dice.
good. Yeah, Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. And then, so you said you did community service. Was it because of that? Like, was that your punishment?
There was, yeah, that was for I think one of them, and there was some bigger things I probably won't say
That's okay.
say
You
on
don't
here,
have to
but
say.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
dying. That's so funny. Okay, so then, so your mom was at your K through 8 school,
yeah.
teaching. When she started teaching, then when after school would happen, would you just stay on campus till she was done and then go home with her? Or would you go home on your own while she was
So,
still at school?
so during those years, we had the after school program, which was in, I think it
Okay.
was hour and a half, where you just play basketball, things like that in the gym, and hang out
Okay.
with your friends, catch up on. I should have been catching up on work, but didn't. So
Okay. And
yeah.
How many kids were in your school? Like how many in your high school graduating class?
So I want to say about 300 in my high school graduating class. So not too
Oh.
too big, but it was still technically 3A, I think, at the time.
Was
I,
that like
yeah.
a regional high school from other like a county one wherever,
Yeah.
a lot of the small towns went to?
Yeah, so you had Fairview Elementary, you had Cullowhee Valley, then you had Scotts Creek School, and then sometimes a lot of the kids from Cherokee area would come to our high school too. It's like they would have a choice for Cherokee High or Swain High or Smoky Mountain High School.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So did you go to school with a lot of Native Americans?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Some of my best friends to this day, talk about it in the book there growing up. So awesome people, and yeah, I tell people like, you look at that culture and you really see the resilience, and from that story I told you earlier, and the perseverance of that people, and it's good to keep up with those guys, and a lot of good stories with them.
That's
That
awesome.
is cool.
So
Were
would
they on a
go ahead.
were they in New Mexico? You've got reservations.
Oh yeah.
I'm not aware of that in North Carolina, right? Were there reservations or are they just living free?
Yeah. So in North Carolina specifically, like 20 minutes from where I grew up, you have the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian Reservation there, and that's where you have
Okay.
the Harris Cherokee Casino, and beautiful
Mm.
place, man. They have elks that walk around, and
Hmm.
I think I put in the book too. There's a spot on the Parkway, and you guys may even went sort of close to it, but this where these lightning bugs, right? They light up in sequence. The
Yeah.
fireflies, the jar flies, and people pay a lot of money to see that, man. And
That's
things
funny.
like that I took for granted growing up. Like the
Yeah.
beauty of that.
Wait, so because you had lightning bugs in Jersey, but are
Yep.
these like special lightning bugs? You're saying that they light up differently
There's
than
a
like the normal Northeast
Well,
lightning
they are.
bugs?
There's a dance to it. There's
yeah
like a rhythm in a
yeah
sense.
yeah. There's a they're communicating, and I can't remember exactly what each when they happen in sequence what that means. Could be something like mating or something like that, for example. But there's
Yeah.
a part in the Parkway, and I always tell people a very first date good idea would if you take a girl to that part in the Parkway and you see these lightning bugs in sequence, man. There's nothing more beautiful, man. You're in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my God. So I'm gonna have to find out if we next time we're gonna go up that way. I might contact you and say, tell me
Yeah.
exactly where we should go.
I want
Because
to move there.
well,
Yeah.
he does want to move.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
talk her into moving to
No, not y-
Morgantown, West Virginia.
I need to bring, I said if the kids will all come, but we have a 29 and a 25-year-old and then the 16-year-old. So we have a ways
She
to,
wants a compound.
I want to compound and bring everybody with us. But so when you went to high school, did you continue with basketball as your interests or did you do any other activities?
Yeah, I did a basketball, and I did all 4 years. I think I lettered the senior or junior senior year there at Smoky Mountain High School. Was a decent player. I wasn't good enough to go to like even D2, but definitely played against some really good players. There was one guy, man. He went to Irwin High at the time. It was Rashad McCants, and he was like 2 years younger than us, man. In my senior year, you know how when someone's like that good of an athlete, that pro level, right? Like they're like light years ahead above everybody, man. I remember just seeing him dunk, man. Even playing like that was to us that was a huge deal. Somebody could dunk a basketball. But yeah, I always knew he'd go do great things, and I think he ended up playing for the Timberwolves after UNC or something like that. But yeah,
All right, cool.
but basketball is a really like a way of life. It's sort of like football in West Texas, sort of like varsity blues type thing.
No, that makes sense. I never thought about that, but I don't think you had either. The basketball would be such a big sport in that area, but now connecting the dots, it makes perfect
Yeah, it
sense.
makes perfect sense. It feels like baseball's pretty big there too, right?
Yeah, we have actually Cal Riley went to my Smoky Mountain High School, and he was the home run king I think a year or two ago there for the
Yeah.
Mariners. So yeah, it's just huge, getting bigger too.
So through high school, was college always discussed as something you would naturally do or was it more like when you're done with school, you're going to go to work? When you're done with school, you're going to do this or that? Or did you guys not really even talk about what was going to happen after high school?
So I had took like some carpentry classes in high school and cabinet making classes just to not do academia, stuff like that. And basically, I get to a point where my dad, he sees where I'm going, sort of, nowhere. I had good enough grades to graduate, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna have a life post graduation. So he gives me that, typical dad talk. I don't know if this is our generational thing, but it was you're about to be a man. It's time to get a job, go to college, or get out. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna join the military. I didn't know which one, and you take the ASVAB test, is which your senior year, and basically they take your scores and they sort of put you in a career that they think you'd be good at based on those scores, mechanical, etc. Basically, and then I was like, I'm gonna talk to this Navy guy, and he was talking about being on a boat for 6 months. And I was like, nah, man, that's not for me. And I talked to an Army recruiter and didn't want to do that. And I was like, I'm gonna talk to Dad about that quality of life of the Air Force I was talking about earlier, like the good chow halls, the TDYs, the golf clubs, everything that comes with that people think that is automatic with that. But yeah, and there I was on my first fixed wing flight ever from Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where MEPS was, to San Antonio, Texas for basic military training.
So you decided to join the Air Force,
I,
basically.
I, I did, yeah.
So the test you just talked about, was that something your school gave you, or was that something that when you went to figure out which branch you wanted to join did,
So,
or was that through school?
yeah, so they test you like the I don't know, the recruiters and stuff like that. They test actually the whole senior
Okay,
class, and I mean I
okay,
probably
okay.
didn't even take it serious. They took us to I think it was Southwestern Community College, just because it could fit everybody in there. And we took this test, and it was all multiple choice. And basically what it is, to this day they still do this to get in any branch of the military. It's called the ASVAB, like a vocational type test, and anything from math, to, and you're sort of, if I remember right, timed on it. But mechanics is a big one, like engineering is a big one. What you would be good at, and at the time that I had a sort of, I guess, what they thought was a mechanical mindset, and I didn't know what I was signing up for. And at my first 5 years in the Air Force, I wasn't a flyer yet. I was a what you call weapons loader,
Mm.
basically, which is a way of saying, they call us load toads. And at that point, it loaded the Strike Eagle F-15 E model, and basically what it is a three-person crew that loads the bombs and missiles, and air to air, air to ground, you name it, on the fighter jets.
Okay, so you graduate. How much time between graduation and I mean, does Air Force do like again? I'm a total civilian, so I'm
Oh, you
gonna
good?
probably
Basic
simplify
training.
this, but like a basic training or a boot camp type thing.
Yeah, it used to be 6 weeks. Now it's 8 weeks. This is called BMT, Basic Military Training, and basically it's just you're getting, you're learning customs and courtesies. You're learning how to walk in a formation, what we call drill, stuff like that. You're just learning, honestly, just standards of conduct, and discipline, if you will. And a lot of us had come from areas where, like, there was no like rank structure. So to me, like, that was a big change in my life, because there's everything rolls downhill to sort of be a part of that and witness that and be on the the bottom of that, and
Yeah.
just to be a good airman, and basically a good wingman concept, like very team involvement, not like what can I do? Is what can we do as this team? As cliche as that sounds, but so you're sort of learning that mindset, and you take that with you in pretty much every job I had in the Air Force.
So how much time between graduation and you left? Like how much time was there before you left for training?
Yeah, so I graduated end of May, and then I went to, was it July 18th of 2000s when I left. So a month and a half, 2 months.
Okay, so not that long. Like and
Yeah,
then you were out there.
not long at all yet.
Were you going to ask something?
No, I find it interesting that you mentioned the services were ready for you guys in your area to test you, to place you. That's a very rural America type of thing, I think, because I don't think they're doing it down here in our metro area quite as organized like that.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, same.
So, but I don't know because I think I only
Now there's
know
always a
like one
service
kid out of every
branch
graduating
on,
class down here
but
that does that.
there's always a branch or a recruiter on the high schools, right? They're always there
Yes,
handing out
yes,
pamphlets on
yes,
career day
yes,
stuff.
yes, yes.
But this sounds a little more organized, and it's a way to keep enrollment up, but also give guys like you an opportunity to, hey, we've got something if you're interested, type of
That
thing.
maybe aren't on like
Oh yeah.
gung ho about college.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it too. Like I didn't have money for college, or anything like that at that time. My parents didn't either, and it's you get the GI Bill, and I sort of, for my own selfish reasons, joined. To be honest with you, like
Mhm.
there's these core values they teach in the Air Force, and one of those is service before self. And I truly didn't know what that meant till later in my career, where I saw that sacrifice, that service, and when you see that changes changes your life, man. I mean, you see our nation's
Yeah.
very best, and someone's brother, someone's friend made the ultimate sacrifice for that freedom, and that's going to stick with you forever. So I didn't really truly know what that was till later.
Yeah.
So before you left, how did your parents feel about you joining? Was your dad, I assume, was he really proud that you were choosing that path?
He was, yeah. And I remember he told me, he's like, son, he's like, you know what? He said, this is the way I look at it. He said, this is your decision. But no matter what, you're gonna have to see it through. At least for I think I signed up for 6 years because they give you a bonus, a small bonus or something like that. And I saw money, right, and so yeah, I'll give me 6 years and I'll do that. And but yeah, whatever that what decision was, I'm gonna have to stick with it. I'm gonna have to get through it, and it's either gonna be good or bad. But either way, I'm getting on the other end of that, and which ended up turning into a 21 .4 year career. So
How
That's
how
cool.
was your mom about it? Was she okay with you joining?
yeah. At that point, it was pre 9/11, right, and all that stuff too, and 2000, just right before it. But yeah, she and my dad both I needed some structure. I needed some discipline. I needed to get my priorities straight. Because I was going nowhere. I mean, if I would have stayed in Appalachia, who knows where I'd be in a ditch or something like that. We had the whole many friends from the opioid, which is sort
Hmm.
of portrayed in that show Dope Sick there, but a lot of people died of that stuff, that I
Hmm.
grew up with, and was it there's a book, was it Demon Copperhead, right? Barbara Kingsolver wrote that, and you see that picture, and I think even in the description, the key details, it's like, basically he was navigating this beautifully cursed place, right? Where, and really what I believe it's saying is that place has a way of reminding us how fragile hope can be if you let it be.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So where did you go for training? I know you said it, but I didn't catch that. Where did you go for training?
Yeah, it was a San Antonio, Texas Lackland Air Force Base as a basic
Okay.
military training, and then at that point, this is my first job in the Air Force, so I'll go over that part of it. And I went to Shepherd Air Force Base, which is in San Angelo, Texas, I believe.
Okay.
Maybe 6 weeks or so, 6 or 8 weeks wasn't long, and then I got to my first, the 334th Fighter Squadron at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, right back to guess what state, North Carolina. So, yeah,
Did you
yeah.
did you become a Spurs fan at all?
I honestly I didn't have time to we had like one day at the end to go out and stuff, get out of town. But yeah,
Yeah.
I did not turn into a Spurs fan. I was a lifetime Bulls fan. The
Oh yeah.
'90s era, right? I mean, that dynasty will never be. There'll never be another one like that.
That's special.
No,
I'm
yeah,
hoping the
no.
Knicks go on a run like
Yeah,
that,
I
but
mean,
Oh
he's
yeah,
thrilled about last night's
yeah,
game. He's
yeah,
from
my drought is
Jersey.
over.
yeah.
When you went to training in Texas, was that your first time going somewhere besides North
Oh yeah.
Carolina, living somewhere besides North Carolina?
Yeah. The furthest I'd ever been was to Eastern Tennessee, to like Pigeon Forge and like Knoxville area, and then Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and that was it. And I went to on my senior trip. We got to go to actually leave out of Miami to go to on a cruise to was it Cozumel, Mexico back then.
Mm,
Cool.
And that was
mhm,
one of the best weeks of my life, and that's all that was so new in me. And in a way that I guess that moment, now I think about it, sort of triggered the like, man, I want to see the world, and get
mm.
outside of these walls of Appalachian and see what happens.
Now, living somewhere else for the first time, like Texas, was there any moments of culture shock for you? Because you're coming from such a small town, and San Antonio is big, especially compared to where you came from. Were there any adjustments, or were you just so busy with training you didn't even have
Yeah,
time for any of that?
yeah, that's a very good point. There's really not much time at that point to even think about like cultural differences, or like you're all in this thing together, right? And that sort of in a good way beat into you, like, hey, like we're all on the same team together, like we all got different roots, but our your wings is what makes us airmen, right? And to get to collectively together, that's what I learned, in that whole process, especially in the flying world, when you get into like special operations, the unity of your brothers and sisters beside you. That's what that life's all about. It's not about me, man. It's about making sure those super ninjas on the ground get home to their families, and especially on the, if I could get into this part of it a little bit, but the when I joined the AC-130 gunship, the 16th Special Operations Squadron. This is fast forward to 2010 era, and basically, the gunship's mission is to provide that close air support for those unconventional forces. It says like your SEALs, your Green Berets, your Rangers, and there's letters all around that squadron where like there's this Ranger holding this baby girl. It's always my why behind the gunship, and he thanks the gunship men and women for those rounds. He's able to go home and see his baby girl, and you don't realize till later when you have a family, you look at those letters a lot different, man. Like that, you're those guys' lifelines, right? And that responsibility, that I don't know, sense of relevance in my mind, when that's gone, that's a hard pill to swallow, and that's when a lot of the demons set in.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I've,
that makes
I've
sense.
got a question. What does it mean to get your wings, and when do you get them?
Yeah, so to get your wings as an arrow gunner, you have back then it was called basic arrow gunner, and now they call it special missions aviators because it was basic aero gunner then. Now it's called basic special missions aviator. And you graduate, and they actually, back then they'd put your wings on. I think I had an old helicopter like MH-53 gunner. He like tagged them on me. Not like you would see in a movie where you're bleeding and all that. Just enough to be like, hey, welcome. And I
Yeah.
think he said give them hell. And this is in 2010, so the wars are still going on at that point. And it was a awesome moment. But you really don't become a really earn your wings, I would say, until really sort of your first deployment, and even leading up to that, man, I had to go talked about 3 weeks in Fairchild, Washington, the survival school there. Survive, escape, survive, evade, resist, escape is what SEER stands for. And basically, I tell people that's the best training I ever had in my life. But I don't ever want to do that again. I think I was so skinny and so hungry by the time I got done with that. I had like one ab showing. I tell people it was probably the most shape I've ever been either. But
Is that like they throw you out in the woods and
yeah,
they're like, make it back?
yeah. They throw you out in the woods, and you're learning basic, survival stuff and stuff like that. Really good training, man. And then I had to go to water survival, which was down in Pensacola, Florida, at the Naval Air Station. They used to do it down there. And basically, what that was, all it was it was sort of fun. You're in a day in the water or whatever. You're on this boat, and they parasail you up 1,000 feet, and they wave these flags, and then you disconnect, so you're parachuting into the Gulf of Mexico at the time. And
Wow.
man, I just remember there's these moments of like this. I was trying to like use common sense a lot, right? And they're sort of getting you to use that common sense to get through these situations, and sometimes even thinking outside the box with that. And I look over, and we had these little boot rafts we had to blow up, and then stay in the water, survive maybe 4 hours or something like that, right? It wasn't bad.
Wow.
And I look over, and there's tiger sharks and stuff like that out there, right? And
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
a navigator, we're on our flight suits and all that, and they gave us these little mini fishing kits, and it was a little, it wasn't even a rod, but a little silver like casting thing, like a round shape. And so he cast out this like silver like spinner, and I know enough from fishing that there's
Yeah.
things are attracted to light that move in the water. And I was like, hey man, I was like, we gotta survive like 4 hours, bro. Like, you don't have to go fishing right now. Like, you're gonna get blood, then what comes with blood sharks. And I think I threw him like across the way like a protein bar or something. But just moments like
Yeah.
that, I look back, man, that was pretty fun. Looking back at it, and
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's super. It just happened recently, right? Over in
yeah.
Iran. It was like a month or 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, when this thing first started.
Oh yeah,
The plane got knocked down. That guy climbed up to the top of the mountain and they rescued him.
It's
That was
that
yeah,
survival.
survival.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Survival.
he used he used those tactics to a T, right? His training,
Yeah.
and I tell people when people talk about air power, right, and air superiority, you'll hear that term a lot, and really what they're talking about is the presence of you know, of America's air power over at AOR, just the
Hmm.
presence of deterrence and stuff like that. And what people forget about, what's left out of that conversation, is the promise to that presence. So when he went down, he had to have enough faith in his wingman, right, and especially those Jolly Greens. That was a brief part of my career, the 4 years in the helicopter, but the combat search and rescue crews that rescued him, man, that's our nation's best, man, and that was the best 4 years of my life, was just being held to that standard with those men and women I flew with. And then the pararescue men that fly in the back are just phenomenal people, and they will go to the ends of the earth. And there's a saying in SOF called "humans are more important than hardware." And on that day specifically, I think we got to witness that, what that really meant. So that was, I'm so glad that
Absolutely.
guy used his training and got out alive. So
It's
Absolutely.
amazing.
I was going to ask you, you said sometimes you have to think outside the box. I mean, have you done any, or do they encourage you guys to learn meditation or learn breath work, or how do you learn anything about how to control your nervous systems so you don't panic in those situations? Are you taught outside the box techniques, or is that something that you would have to search for on your own?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I've never been asked, and I'm glad you asked that. But so you have aircrew physiology is what it's called, and just some of the normal stuff you have to do. You ever heard of it? It's called the chamber, right? Where they take you in this, this fuselage type thing, and they're depleting the oxygen out of it to where you get what you call hypoxic, and you sort of get to the point where you're pushing to the limit to where you recognize your symptoms enough to get your oxygen on 100%. So that's pretty normal to get to that point, and basically recognize, okay, I'm not thinking right. And there's things they'll do, like they'll give you like a sequence of cards, right, when you're getting normal 100% oxygen, right, and then they'll turn them over. You'll get to that point, right, to your hypoxia, and you're very uncomfortable, but you're trying to get you comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. And then
Yeah.
you recognize, like, I can't remember what this is. Okay, I'm messing up. Boom, I hit my oxygen. I can breathe. So you're basically learning to react in that calmly manner, I guess. And there was a training too, and this was the hardest training I ever had. And a lot of people don't struggle with it, but a lot of people do. And it's called the dunker. And what it is there's this helicopter fuselage, and they roll it over, and you're 10, 15 feet underwater. And this one was back up at Washington in a pool, believe it or not. And they blind you, but these blacked out goggles, excuse me, and then they flip it over. You have a HEATS bottle where you have to breathe. You have 5 minutes of air, of escape air, if you will. And I could not find this handle for the first time, man. And I failed and failed and failed and failed. And then, by the grace of God, the guy gave me a second chance. I was able to come back. And by the time that SEER instructor was done with me in that moment, like I got through that course so quick after that. Like I was very comfortable being uncomfortable. And I realized later that that's what they're trying to get you, is to make those decisions, to do whatever you have to do. And that is sometimes thinking outside the box, And I think a good example of even unconventional warfare, that's sort of, the whole point of it, is to do these phenomenal things with a small footprint, right? And like the
Yeah.
105 millimeter, right? There was moments where there would be a degraded mode of fire, if you will. And, okay, the firing cylinder went out, and there's no actuation of think of it like a paw hitting a trigger to, to make like a percussion mechanism type thing. And we would basically get some, parachute cord, 550 cord, and then tie it to that paw, and when get the ready fire call, you turn into like a flying artillery guy, so you'd fire it, So the point is like you're never out of the fight. You're sort of taught to think that, like, no matter what happens, there's people that depend on you, and that's one thing I've learned with flying. You're going to get through a lot of problems, man. Could be emergency procedures, could be weather, could be communication, could be whatever could go wrong, because that happens, and that's the moments where, I tell people, just like the moon, right? That's the darkest night. That's when the moon burns the brightest, and there's people that depend on you, to be the very best aviator you could be.
It's amazing because I would imagine it's a balance of having complete self awareness because you need to be aware of, you said, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So
Yeah,
you have to be aware of yourself, to be in touch with what is happening. So you know if you're getting to the brink of something, so that you know you need to go into your toolbox, your resources, and find something inside yourself to get through it.
yeah,
So you have to be so self aware, but balancing that with not having imposter syndrome, meaning, what am I doing here? I can't handle this. Who am I to think I could do this? Is there is there some moment where you like, does training get the imposter syndrome out of you? Because the level of confidence and belief in yourself too has to be so deep
oh yeah,
that it can't break under pressure.
You can't panic
You
yeah,
can't panic, but you have to also have such a confidence and belief in yourself. That's such a
or
mix
desperation.
psychologically. Like, how
yeah.
do you, when does this all come together? I can't be in those 8 weeks of training.
Yeah, yeah. And so my first flight on a gunship, this is going to illustrate in my opinion, how this works. So on the AC-130 gunship, it was going so bad, what we call situational awareness, right? And basically, you have all these different communicators, these radios going off. Then you're trying to hear these three words: clear, do, engage, and all these different things are happening to you, malfunctions, you name it. It's going wrong, right? And I didn't even know where I was at this point. My first flight, I'm sweating, man. I'm panicking. I'm nervous, and my instructor, he basically said something effective. What he say? You're the reason I have to brief seatbelts on airliners. It went that bad, you know. So, so there's some tough love with that, and then he sees me licking my wounds, and I was being dumb. I was feeling sorry for myself, and not just getting over it, just moving on, right? Perseverance. And he asked me, he's like, "What's the most important, word in the dictionary?" I was like, "Man, I don't know where I'm at, bro." He's like, "Perseverance." He's like, "I want you to think about what that word really means and come back next flight, ready to fight." And the next flight, we actually got to go to the range here, Melrose Range in New Mexico. And once I saw that 105 millimeter recoil up to 49 inches, I was like, man, like this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. And realizing that your family depends on you, your nation depends on you, your brothers and sisters on the ground, and the ones you fly with all depend on you. So there's basically a good way of putting it is they have to be able to trust you with their best friend's life, you know. And when you get that acceptance, you're like, okay, this is what it's about, you know.
So it's almost like thinking of others is what gives you
Yeah,
that strength. You're as much as you have to be self-aware, you have to let go of that and put the better cause in front of you, and that's what gives you the strength and the perseverance. Is that a good way of summing it up?
yeah, yeah. And I think another good way of talking about it was like, because in these situations, like my perception, right, is meaningless. Like I don't, no one gets any value but me from my perception, right? But you
Mm.
use what we call crew resource management, get someone else's perspective. So you're getting into perception versus perspective. You get at that point 13 different minds thinking about, because sometimes it's not all black and white. You don't know exactly what's wrong. You just know something's wrong. And with collectively, with all those different lenses, you're getting the answer to that problem. You know, that's so yeah, it is. It's about the group effort. It's about, you know, the way I look at it is I'm either my brother's keeper or I'm not. It's about them, you know.
It's so interesting.
Well,
Uh,
it's a very interdependent system,
yes.
and you all count on one another. And just to go back to the rescue from a few weeks ago, that guy probably had no doubt that people were coming to help him, right, or find him. Is
Oh
that
yeah.
that's just
Yeah,
how you guys operate, right? That's the code.
Yeah, and you know, the whole Jolly Green mission set is these things we do that others may live, and there's this whole unit, you know, dedicated to what we call personnel recovery, and I can't remember the last time that had happened. I know General Goldfein at one point went down and he was rescued by the Jolly Greens and stuff like that, but when I did it, it was a CASEVAC, right? So you're in combat, you're on standby for when, you know, like in our situation, guys got hit with mortars and we went and got them out of there. But this one was different. This is like, okay, this guy's evading. Like, there's a lot of coordination, a lot of training that he has to remember on the worst day of his life. That was what's phenomenal about this.
While
Imagine,
injured.
yeah, while injured, you know, people
Yeah.
closing in, right, and he knew that he had to have faith in those Jolly Greens were going to pull him out, and they did, you know, with the help of you know, other, you know, agencies and assets and resources. But yeah, he had to have that faith, and and like you said, he had to have faith in himself. And going back to survival school, I'm going to try to get this right, but there's a on the board up there in Fairchild, it was like someone can last like 3 days without water, 30 days without food, but 3 minutes without the will to survive. So you had to have that will, you know, the
Mhm.
iron will. So,
It
That's
it
interesting.
has to be like a light switch almost. Like
oh yeah,
I'm going to survive, or I'm like, once you decide you're going to try to survive. But it's getting to that point of, okay, this is what I'm doing, not losing hope. Okay, so just to go back. So you're 8 weeks training in San Antonio, but then you said you did 6 weeks somewhere else in Texas.
yeah, yeah. At that point in
What
my
was that?
career, yeah. So that was a shepherd. That was when I was a weapons loader. Basically, you're learning the basics of learning how to load bombs and missiles on an
Okay.
aircraft. And I didn't get an aircraft yet till the end of that 6 weeks, which was the Strike Eagle, the F-15E, which ironically is the one we're talking about that the Wizzo survived out of. But that was in Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and I was there
Okay.
for, you know, approximately 5 years or so.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So then from Texas, you go back to North Carolina. Um, and during that time, can you describe exactly what you were doing during those years?
Yeah, yeah. So this was, you know, I'd got there, you know, I was called a year before 9/11, and basically, I was on mid shift, so I was working from was 11 to 7 a.m. or so, and basically, you're getting the lines ready to fly the next morning, you know, and training lines, they're air to air missiles and stuff like that, and even air to ground bombs that are just like, you know, they'll put out smoke or something like that when they hit the target, and then so my buddy come knocking on my door. It was approximately 9 a.m. and the first plane had already hit the tower, if I remember right. And we had a day room, which was like a common area. So I didn't really have this college life, but I had a dorm life, right? So we're like the people you serve with, you get to have this common meeting area where you can cook, play cards, video games, whatever. And it was a tube style TV. I'll never forget it. Maybe had three channels, one of those being the Armed Forces Network. And, you know, the first plane hit and we saw the second one hit. And at that point, we realized, like, man, this has changed America's, our way of life for a while, you know? And I thought about what's different in those first responders DNA, right? Like those firefighters, EMTs, those policemen that ran in those buildings that day when everyone's running out. Like, how does that happen? That level of selflessness, and then that was what really determined the next 5 years of my life, which was to become an Air Force firefighter. Um, which that was at I forgot where we trained, Lewis FD DoD Fireland, Lewis F. Garland DoD Fire Academy. That's also in Texas, in San Angelo, Texas, and I got to do that for 5 years there in Charleston, and it was really fun moments in the firehouse there. And you're doing Air Force firefighting, which is really geared towards the ARF. You ever seen those guys at the airport? They walk around in those baked potato suits, like
Yeah.
looks like aluminum foil.
Yeah.
So it was that for like 5 years, and you're standing about engine runs, and you do some structure firefighting, which I may have saw like three structure fires my whole career doing that job. But what I did get from that was a arsenal of pranks you sort of learn in the firehouse, and which I later took with me on my deployments as a gunner. So yeah,
So you okay, so 9/11 happens, you get inspired by the firefighters
yeah,
that sacrificed for that. Um, and then you decide you want to be an Air Force firefighter. So
right,
you leave North Carolina, go back to Texas to train for
yeah.
that. How long was that training?
Well, so yeah, and so let me back up a little bit. Sorry, I missed this, but like I ended up doing the weapons thing. So I went from Seymour Johnson to Osan, Korea for 1 year short tour, and then back
Okay.
to Tyndall, which is in Florida, Panama City, Florida. And so that was when I had my retraining window. The 5 years was up, so I could apply for this job, and I got it. The firefight, and then I went to I believe that one's in San Angelo, Texas, Goodfellow Air Force Base, and did that for. That was a tough course, man. It was longer than 6 weeks. I think I was there a few months or whatnot, and I did that. Then I got assigned to Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina. So I'm still sort of Carolina-ish, right, away from
Yes.
home, but not too much, And um, yeah, man, it was some awesome moments in that firehouse.
So
Charleston's cool too, right? Did you
Charleston's
get
Oh
really
to
yeah.
cool.
eat the town at all?
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. You go down to the cobblestone roads, Market Street, and the
Yeah,
shrimp and
Hmm.
grits and all that cool stuff.
pineapple fountain.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but when you're an Air Force firefighter, are all the firefighters in your house Air Force? Is it
So,
like a
so, so
military firehouse?
it is a military firehouse, but some of them are GS civilians, like the GS
Oh,
civilian guys,
okay.
and we would get guys from, I mean, Chicago that were in like the reserves, and we'd get guys from that were from locally, them guys from Boston. So you get a little bit of everything there.
you
So,
know,
so you would go out and fight fires just like any other fireman, like a house fire, or
On
was it
base.
on
on
base.
base?
Yeah,
On
yeah.
Yeah,
base. Okay,
on
that's
base.
what I'm trying to connect. Okay, on base. So you're
Yeah,
still serving,
yeah.
but you're a firefighter on base there in Charleston. Okay, that makes sense. I'm sorry, you were going to ask a question.
What's interesting to me, and this is an ignorance thing for me, I would have assumed I thought we sent everybody over to Afghanistan to the Middle East to fight after 9/11, but that didn't happen, obviously. Um, how come you didn't get deployed? And was that disappointing? Were you like, I want to go.
Oh yeah.
I want to get on the front line on this.
Yeah, I hadn't been deployed at that until I became a firefighter. But yeah, I sort of I always wanted to get in a fight. And I always wanted to do more. And you see this sort of theme of like me always felt like I was sitting on the sidelines. For whatever reason, luck had it at that point. And I wanted to serve my country at the highest capacity I could. And even as a firefighter, the thing about Air Force firefighting is it doesn't happen often. When it happens, it's a lot of work. And everything on base is fire safe. So you don't really have this structure fire every day like the guys in Boston would or New York, right? But you do get some. And I went to Balad as a firefighter, and we did some medical stuff there when people would bring people to the gate and stuff like that. And also we had my first structure fire, which was basically what it was like this warehouse type fire, which took us all day to put out. And that was the first time like where I sort of like, okay, man, I got to do my job. I got to put the wet stuff on the hot stuff. I got to, you know, make someone's, possibly last day not or worst day not their last day. So I'm sort of getting that feeling, that desire for that need. And but yeah, it wasn't like you're in, Chicago or New York or something like that, and you're a structure fire every day. You're doing auto
Yeah, yeah.
extrication every day. You know what I mean?
Did you said you got deployed though while you were a firefighter?
Yeah, I went to Balad, Iraq at that point.
And when was that?
That was roughly 2006 ish, 6, 7,
And
something like
so
that.
okay, and so that was your first deployment?
It was, yeah, it was to Balad, Iraq. Yeah,
And how long were you there?
it was like 6 months, so it wasn't like terrible. It was the old what we call the AEF cycles, the Air Expeditionary Force. It was like 6 months rotations.
Okay. And then after that, did you come back to the States?
Yeah, I came back to Charleston Air Force Base and finished out my time there as a firefighter, just doing all base stuff and nothing too crazy about it. I got my AMT basic at one point, but barely used it, stuff like that.
And then after Charleston, then what was your next step?
So this is when my story really sort of picks up, gets interesting because I went home on leave. You get 30 days of leave in the military each year. And I was at a place at a pizza joint, and I look out and there's this same main street, the same road that separated, two sides of town my whole career, right? And I look out and with my friends at this pizza joint and I tell people I see the same cracks in the road, right? Same cracks been there my whole life, meaning that you look around, you start seeing the same people doing the same stuff they were 10 years ago. And then, but I knew at that point, like I wanted to get off the sideline and I wanted to serve my country with the highest capacity I could. And I went back to the fire station and there was this book, man, just lo and behold, it was called Chosen Soldier by Dick Couch, and it's about the 12-man Green Beret teams. In the beginning of the book, this is way before Fury made this verse, famous, but there's the Isaiah 6:8, the send me verse, right? And I was like, man, like I want to do this. I want to be on the tip of the spear. I want to serve the best way I can. And I think physically I realized like I couldn't be like a special operator per se, but what I could do is, provide them close air support from the air. And that's when I, applied for the NCO Corp retraining program. And there was a family member that flew, so I had a little bit of help there, to be honest with you. But I joined the 16th, and I started flying that gunship. And, I didn't really know what it was to sort of get in a fight until my first, real gunship mission.
So how long was the training for that?
That one was about a year. So it was you leave and we go to that basic aero gunner I told you about, or basic SMAS they call it. Then you
Yeah.
go to survival school, then you go to water survival school, then you go to the chamber I was telling you about. And then I got to my
Yeah.
first, operational base, Cannon Air Force Base, which I'm near here today. It's the 27th Special Operations Wing, and you start your training there, and it takes about, I want to say, 14 to 20 something like just flights to get checked out. Get your Form 8, which is your qualification, and you start out very basic flying and very basic gun malfunctions. Then you get into where you're doing everything at night, right? A lot of times scanning with NVGs, and again, you're sort of seeing this theme of like, okay, I can do it in the daylight. I want to get comfortable being uncomfortable because the gunship mission, a lot of people know we mostly come out at night. Mostly, the daytime stuff does happen. Ironically, my first shoot was in the daytime, but yeah, you're getting these repetitions. And one thing about repetition I've learned is like I went back to my thoughts in like this basketball camp, right? There was Lenore Ryan College. I was a kid at the time, and this older man, this coach from there came and he does this whole thing where he sits there and he shoots 100 free throws, right? 100, like I swear 100. He may have missed one. It was the most incredible thing at the time I'd ever seen my whole life. And the point he made, he said that the key to success in life and anything is repetition. And I sort of remember that like that's why you're having to get these reps in because when it hits a fan, that's all you have to fall back on is your training.
Hmm.
You take that guy for the
Yeah.
other day, for example, he probably replayed that scenario in his mind a
Yeah.
hundred times and survival refresher. Like that way, when it happens, you have this robot type reaction to where you're like, okay, I've been here before. I'm going to get through this.
Hmm.
Yeah. So during the training, I assume you're in flight simulators a lot, right? Is that
For the
are you,
helicopter side, I was, yeah. And then for the, sometimes as a gunner, you'd go in there and do like, there's certain things we would do now as SMAs as for air refueling when we hit the tanker. So
hmm
little things like that, but mostly as a gunner, your training is like in person. And there's gun rooms where they could have these dummy rounds and set up malfunctions and stuff for you. But really, it doesn't click. I would say till you get in the air and it happens.
So are you, when you say gunner, are you the guy that's sitting backwards that's shooting people?
On helicopters, yes, that was me. I was facing the windows with a 50 caliber minigun. But on
Okay.
the gunship, what's cool about the AC-130? Back then we had 13 crew members, right? Where you had the pilots all the way back to the four gunners in the back and a loadmaster who's literally laying on his stomach looking out this bubble we had in the ramp.
Mm.
And you having these people, 13 crew members working simultaneously together in this organized chaos fashion, to provide this symphony of 10 rounds per minute from the 105 coming out. But it doesn't sound like a lot, right? But you could imagine being on the other end of this basically tank shooting at you from 10, a few thousand feet in the air. So
Wow. I mean, it's just so okay.
while
So
getting shot at.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
That's the
Yeah.
golden gunship rule too. Is to always expect to be shot at when shooting because the gig's up at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you train for a year,
Yeah.
and then do you get deployed at the
Oh
end of
yeah.
that year?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, within 3 weeks after I got my checked out my Form 8, the Spectre patch, and I was in Bagram, Afghanistan for multiple deployments. And as a flyer, it's a little different because your deployments are sort of geared towards your flight hours, right? And so you have 90 days, you can get 330 flight hours, and if that happens, they have to like sit you down. There's waivers they can get for that, but it's a lot for them to get that. And basically, making sure you're okay mentally, physically, just rest in general. There's crew rest, all these different rules you're having to abide. But yeah, it was fast and furious. 3 weeks later, there I was in Bagram, Afghanistan for the first time.
So
What
what?
a trip.
When was that? What year was that? Your first
That was
deployment
the
over there?
fall of 2011, if I remember right, about that time frame.
So were you more nervous or more excited to finally apply everything you learned
Oh, I was
when you?
so excited. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous too. Because you're flying for the first time overhead bad guy land. In combat. And the Taliban specifically knew about the gunship. I think there's like this CNN video where this reporter's in this cave with him, and they're like, yeah, there's those drones. We're not afraid of the fast jets, but that cargo aircraft that scares us. And sure enough, like clockwork, the sun goes down, and you just hear the 105 going off, and the Taliban thought the reporter told them their position, so they kicked them out or whatever. But yeah,
Mm.
it was well known, and they had different names for us and stuff like that.
Well, what a menacing thing you're part of, right? You're flying overhead. They don't really have great weapons to shoot back. I don't, right? Maybe small artillery, but you guys are just,
Yeah,
it's intense, I would think.
Yeah,
Well,
I wouldn't say
awesome.
like in my opinion, I didn't have like a real surface to air threat until the ISIS conflict happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they did have stuff that could reach out and touch us, if you will. But yeah, they would have AK-47s like probably left from the Russians or something like that, and
Mhm.
with Afghanistan there was two types of missions back then, and they would give you a pager, man, believe it or not, like an old school pager, and we lived in these B huts, these basically plywood huts, and you're putting six to eight people in these things, and a
Mm.
page will go out, and there's basically the ones where there's a troops in contact where they alert you, right, and you launch within 15 to 30 minutes was the contract, and you get overhead, and you immediately start shooting, and basically they hear your props, the four fans of freedom we call them, and they start running because they know that it's what's here, right, and what's
Mhm.
about to happen, and then and people get they get locked up on this enemy killed in action thing. And to me, it was never about that, man. Because you're making sure our guys get home, right? That was everything, to
Mhm.
me. And people don't see that side of that, that brothers keeper side of that mission. But then there's the other missions, right, where you get another beat with certain numbers meant certain things, and you would go. They're going after a heavy hitter, right? This high ranking, high value target, and
Mhm.
that's when them super ninjas are going, and they're going to try to either get him, get some more information, etc., or what else. So
So you said you guys are in like these huts. So are you not on a base when you're over there?
yeah. We're in our own sort of compound, if you will, when we're at Bagram. But yeah, you're definitely these like plywood little huts, and basically
And they were
we'd have
putting
one.
a bunch of you guys into one of those?
Yeah. We even had I remember sort of bunk beds at one point when we were really packed. But yeah,
Was
so
there like a mess hall and stuff
yeah.
for
We
okay,
would
so
we would walk up. I believe it's called maybe the Dragon Defac or something like that. You'd walk off, you off our compound and go eat and stuff like that.
so how many deployments did you do over there?
So I did 14 total deployments, and then yeah, basically majority 9 to 10 of those being, of course, Bagram. And then I did when the ISIS thing happened, we went to Kuwait at first, and then we would fly, from Kuwait over Iraq and other places, and then you're looking at 2.5 hours before you even putting the guns online at that point, and then you're flying back, and then what else did I do? At that point, I went to 60s after the ISIS trip, so then I went to East Africa twice. So
So how long were you away from the States at a time? Was it like a year, 2 years, 3 years? Like how
no,
does
it
that
was
work?
so it was 90 days there, 90 days back, and basically, what would happen is you're coming back, and the guys you're high fiving, you won't see them for 90 days, then you're going. So there was this
Okay.
huge, you know, back and
Okay.
forth. So I would say half the year, every year, and then I believe it was Admiral McCraven was the guy that was like, okay, like we're going to slow the ops tempo down. And, that's when sort of these programs were developed, and they went from a 1-to-1, what we call dwell time, 90 days on, 90 days off, to eventually, like, 90 days on and like maybe 180 days off or something like that, which was a lot better, felt a lot better than
Okay.
the other.
Okay. So how is that different then? Because I've heard about people serving and they're gone for like a year or 2 years, right? So is it what you're doing that determines how long you're gone?
Yeah, I would definitely say because we were technically an enabler for, like, for the special operators. And so like the army guys, though, man, like, God bless them, man, that they're on their 12, 15 months, the ground pounders, right? Those
Okay.
guys do a lot more time than what we do, and ours is always felt sort of spoiled in a way, like we're doing this 90 days and going back 90 days. But I enjoyed that sort of ops tempo because it wasn't like, you start getting past 3 months, man. That's when you miss the family, you miss communicating with the family every day, all that, And guys were always scared. I would see, even when 90 days, right? Like, guys would have a baby, get deployed, and get back, and wondering if their baby would recognize them. And I always feared that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and so imagining if you're gone 12 months, 15 months, like those
Yeah.
guys,
Yes.
so is it when you're over there, what was, because you guys are such a force, and like you were just mentioning the weaponry that over in Afghanistan was nothing compared to ours. Like, did you feel that you were ever really threatened, like your safety during that time over there?
Not on my Afghanistan trips, but I definitely feel like our guys was, you would see them get shot at, and there was always like the enemy always had like an RPG or a Diska or like an AK-47 shooting at our guys. Like, there was always a reason for us to be called to be there as insurance, right, and to make sure those guys got home.
So
And they're
yeah.
opportunistic too, right? They chill till there's an
Yep.
opportunity. They're not stupid, and they take advantage of it and try to catch us by surprise.
So how long were you in? Would you keep going back to Afghanistan? Did that go on for like a couple of years, where Afghanistan
So,
was your main place you were going?
so that was what, 2011 to 2015 was my last one, and then um, right in the beginning of 2016 is when I retrained, or cut trained, if you will, to a different aircraft, which was the Jolly Greens, the Payhawk helicopters I was talking about earlier. And I did that for, call it, 4 years out at Moody Air Force Base in South Georgia, there, Valdosta.
Was that the search and rescue?
Yep. That was the combat search and rescue, the Casevac type stuff we did.
So did you rescue a lot of guys during
So
that
there was,
time?
yeah. So June 8, 2018, we were in East Africa, and we were basically holding down for 7 days of this operation, to stand by Casabat. Think about like a mass casualty. You're there in case that happens. You're going to get these guys and bring them out. And naturally, day 6 or 7 of that op, you know, I went to the tactical operations center, and talked to the intel lieutenant, and I was like, man, it's one of those situations where you eat when you can eat, sleep when you can sleep, because you're at a fob at that point, on these helicopters. And I went back. She's like, yeah, all was quiet. You're good, And I went back as soon as I hit the top bunk, and this is daytime. I think it's about 3 p.m. over there, but I hear, attention on that, scramble, 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 right? And at that point, sprinted to the helicopter, longest quarter mile of my life. It felt like, your adrenaline's pumping, so you're thinking about all this stuff, what it could be. And then we get there, and we took off within, like, I think it was like 3.5 to 5 minutes, something like that. We were off the ground, and to sort of paint a picture of like what can go wrong in an op. We take off, we do a right hand sort of bank, and the guy on the left, he was on the left gunner on a 50 cal, super experienced guy, and awesome aviator, man. And the Searnosh was one on his 50 cal machine gun, which created a runaway gun. And basically, a easy way to say that was like, basically, without him pulling the trigger, once he armed it, it had the electric voltage, right, where it just basically ran away. It's continued to shoot, and I just see these impacts, 15 feet below us. I'm like, man, we just took off. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Why are we getting shot at already, right? And I had pulled simultaneously the flare pins, and what flares are, there's these huge fireballs that come out the aircraft to protect us against surface to air missiles. And then that happened because we had basically left the cockpit doors off for weight, because weight equals more gas, and which
Mhm.
more weight you have, the more people you can pick up. And so we're on like this 13-minute flight there, and the communications were out with the ground force commander, and the
Jeez.
JTAC, the guy that's going to call us in and use us to strike targets with 50 cals if we had to. And so we get there, we finally get comms with the JTAC, and basically at this point we had to fight our way in a little bit with suppression fire. So we do 3 or 4 gun patterns, and what it was there was these 12 Al Shabaab guys in a tree line that were shooting like the big mortars at our Green Berets and those guys and some partner nation guys. And they had hit, one guy direct, and basically we had three cat alphas, meaning that on our aircraft where you have an hour to get them back for the golden hour. They have a higher probability to survive through surgery. And so after a few gun runs, we land on this like narrow road, and like they brought the first Green Beret in, or the first American in, Eagle, and basically the PJ started giving him a tracheotomy at that point, and he
Wow.
took it direct, so it was bad. It's my first time sort of seeing this up close and personal, and they'd put another Green Beret beside me, and he had took a eye wound, so they had it wrapped or whatnot. Then a partner nation guy came up running the aircraft, and he got shot in the stomach, and his stomach's really bad and stuff. And so we take back off and do some more gun runs, and then they had 2 guys to pick up, and we get back, and I load my aircraft with more beans, bullets, and gas and stuff like that, and take back off. And they had one like a lesser priority to pick up, and at that point I'd shot like pretty much half my ammo can on that tree line, and they got him. We got back, and then the experienced gunner. He is like, hey Tony, he's like, Dyer, check the bottom of the aircraft for bullet holes. And I was like, okay, cool, And then I was like, then it hit me. I was like, this was this close, right? This was like this. This is real, right? And I get to the front of this aircraft, and I see the pilot, and his face was white, and I knew what had happened, and we'd lost an American at that point. And again, that's someone's brother, someone's son, someone's friend. So I didn't know what those words meant till that day. Sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds
No,
intense.
it's, I was just thinking that because this sounds, if I combine the time in Afghanistan to this time, we're talking 9 years about
No, so that would be, what was that? 20? Yeah, you're right. Or 7 years.
7 years
What
of combat. It's during that time, and during the what'd you call them? The Jolly Green.
the
Yeah,
Jolly
yeah,
Green?
the Jolly Green. It's basically this. These units were created in Vietnam, and what would happen was when a pilot would go behind enemy lines and get shot down. For example, what we saw the other day, these 2 helicopters would land in the H-3s would land in these rice paddies, and by the time they went and rescued the pilot and got him on board and got him back, the enemy would get there and they would see these 2 green feet prints. It looks like in the rice paddies, and that's where you get the green feet and the Jolly Greens. And I tell
Oh,
people,
okay.
and I tell people, man, that was the very best of my career, was just flying with those men and women, most professional, most humble, you know, most trusting aviators you could ever have. And the pararescue men that fly in the back, those guys are the best in the world. Those guys will literally lay down their life to get someone out. And you when you're around those type of men and women, man, it's a very humbling experience. Very humbling.
So was the when you were with the Jolly Greens, was that also 90 days on, 90 days off, or is it a different timeline?
Yeah, it was a give or take 90 days on, 90 days off. And we wouldn't hit those hours close to even close to what we'd get on Gunship, because you're there basically in case something happens. And
Right.
we had went almost, at that point, a long time without anything happening, and then naturally, right at the end, all hell breaks loose. So
It's probably in a weird way kind of like when you were a firefighter, you're kind of
yeah,
way more intense, but you're just waiting. And then
yeah,
when you have to be ready at any time. So for about 7 years, you're 90 days on with this high intensity,
yeah.
and then you're 90 days home. How do you shift so that you can downshift and be in civilian life without that strong, and like, be you need to be able to be around people who aren't used to that intensity. You need to be able to have relationships, talk to your family, your friends without, it's just such a different, with your nervous system has to
Yeah.
shift completely so you can assimilate back into civilian life, and then 90 days later you're back on again. Did that take a toll, or did you learn ways to kind of shift in and out of that?
So I learned the wrong ways to sort of to deal with that. That this is where, if I'm really being honest and looking back at it, this is where that first little lie I would tell myself, that I can't be an alcoholic. Because I go over there for 90 days and I can't drink because of General Order 1 and all that. You can't drink over there. And I was like, I can't be an alcoholic, right? And then it sort of escalated like way past that point, and I, little things like I would have shower shoes on every shower deployment, and anybody that's been over there can tell you why, because there's all kinds of nasty stuff in those showers and the athlete's foot. And you get back and you're showering in your shower at your home for the first time, and without showers, it's just a hard thing to sort of wrap your brain around, like like I'm wondering what is normal. Is this what I want for the rest of my life? Either way, I knew I was going to. Right, I'm already at the halfway point at least. So yeah, it was always a very hard thing to do, and even married life. And they would give you help. They would sort of counsel you on this stuff as a group. Like, hey, like you guys have been gone for this long. Your wife's been or wife or husband has been taking care of everything. So sort of ease your way back into it. And there was this sort of this week of like this romantic, like what do they call it right when you get married, like a
Honeymoon
honeymoon?
period.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
honeymoon period, right? And so there's that, and then when that's over, you're sort of butting heads unintentionally because my wife at that point had been doing everything while I was gone, and mowing the yard, being a mom, everything that comes with that, and going to school, online and stuff. And I'm like, man, like they're right. I need to sort of look back, see the situation for what it is, and just try to love her and appreciate her, And I wish I'd done that more.
Well, and do the families get any support with counseling or anything on how to, is there support for the family on how to receive the service person when they're home? Or is it kind of like everyone just has to figure this out on their own?
So it didn't start out where we had something like that, but now, we have the military family and life counseling, the MPLAX, what they call it, and that's all part of this program, which I used a lot, was called the Preservation of the Force and Family, and all that sort of started when Admiral Craven changed those dwell times, and the humans were important in hardware. We're seeing what we're trying to get to our roots here with that, and basically every
Yeah.
squadron or these type of units would have a psychologist, which I used a lot, and especially in the end of my career, and then you have a physical therapist and a physical trainer, and then there's like another MFLAC, like a behavioral health type psychologist, where families, your wives, kids could even go see if they wanted. So, but yeah, there's things out there for us now that we didn't have, forever ago.
Y-
I have a question
Yeah.
though. I mean, it feels like what you're going from intense battle to home life back to intense battle, and it feels like, are you going in in and out of like a PTSD type of thing? Is it that intense?
And for me, it wasn't like that at first, because there was like this switch that I would turn on over there to like, hey, I need to perform. This is what it is, and I need to get back to my family, right? And then when I get back, and actually missed the routine of being over there. I missed my scheduled meals. We would land and go to the chow hall and being with my bros and bras, and just hanging out, and PlayStation, and just all the comedy that comes in these type of atmospheres too is priceless, man. That's your brother and sisterhood, and you get back to the norm, and the only way I can describe it, you ever seen that movie Goodfellas?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
At the end where he goes to that, I think he was technically in like Oklahoma, Henry Hill, right? And he realized that life was over for a
Yeah.
moment, right? Like now I'm
Yeah.
just a normal dude. Like, I mean, I still train and stuff like that, but you're it's a hard thing to go from something so unreal, unconventional to something so normal. And that's what people forget about these uncommon jobs, right? Whether it's a firefighter, cop, first responder, military person, is we're very normal men and women doing these very uncommon things. And then we're going
Hmm.
back to being normal again. So you see that dilemma, right? That sort of inner dilemma you have.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you compartmentalize
Yep.
in order to function, but then there's always that fear that you're going to compartmentalize yourself away and not be able to connect with your wife, with your husband,
Yeah.
with your children, because
Oh,
you've shut everything down.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's such a delicate balance there. When did you meet your wife during all of this?
So I had met her from that last the Kuwait trip I was telling you about, the ISIS trip. So I'd got back and maybe been back 12 hours just to show sort of my party life and everything. But she was going to Eastern New Mexico University to working on her bachelor's at that point. And my buddy was like, "Hey, like there's some girls we're gonna go meet at the gym at the college. We're gonna play a little 3-on-3, and there's a cookout over near the college area where he lived." And it was more about the girls at that point than there was anything. I was like, "Yeah, man, sure." And I get back and we play some basketball, man. And I just remember she had a very Native American like slang, And I sort of knew growing up from around a lot of Native Americans that the things she would
Mm,
say, like if you've seen Reservation Dogs, there's Willie Jack's always saying like "sco then," right, as in a clever way of saying "let's go then," or she would say "stu this," as in let's do this, right? And
mm-hmm.
I was always in love with that culture, man, and it's how they handle things and their perseverance, And we're on this. I tell my wife I'm hopeless, but I'm also a romantic. But we're on like this this catwalk type of thing that crosses the highway, and we're on there. And I remember, hey, I was like, if you don't mind me asking, are you Native American? She just smiled and said, yeah. And at that point, I was like, I knew like I had to have her. And I was in the friend zone for a while, but guys, there's hope you can climb out, and I would go. She worked at the bank when she could, and stuff like that too. And I'd go there for her lunch breaks and be like, hey, like, can I take you out to eat? And I'd wait 2 hours. I was that gullible, or just I don't know, whatever you want to call that.
No, your actions
Smitten.
matched up with your words though. You weren't
Yeah,
all talk,
yeah,
your actions followed through. I think there needs to be more of that, to be honest with you, with the younger generations. But we didn't actually track. How did you end up in New Mexico?
yeah, yeah. So that's when I had retrained into Aero Gunner in 2010. Remember, so I'd left
Okay.
Charleston, and so the
Okay.
gunship has two bases, or Air Force Special Operations has two bases. You have one at Herbert Field, Florida, which is near Fort Walton Beach, if you guys have been there. Then you have one in Cannon Air Force Base, New Mexico, and Clovis, New Mexico, which is where I'm at now. So you have your Eastern Air Commandos, and you have your Western. And I
Okay.
got assigned to this gunship squadron, the one that's here, in
So
Canyon.
every time you came home from the 90 days off, you were going back to you were going to New Mexico during this time.
Correct, yeah.
All right. And then she's from New Mexico?
Yeah, yeah, she is. She's from up near Gallup, near the Navajo Nation up there.
And so how long did it take before she married you? How many hours did you have to wait?
Yeah, I want to say it was about 6 months, man, and I didn't have enough for a ring, man. But what I did have, when you leave these deployments, you usually stop at Shannon, Ireland, and that was like
Mm,
with the rotator type thing, and so
okay.
I'd bought a clutter ring, clutter ring,
Yep.
the Irish
Lotta.
clutter ring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the only reason I even knew what that meant was from that Firefighter movie, the one with John Travolta in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. Maybe one day I'll make somebody a lucky lady, or something with this. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all I had. And I asked her was it within 6 or 7 months, something like that. It was really fast, And
Okay.
she said yes, and
And,
basically I put that ring on the right way it was supposed to go. So
good.
Good job.
What,
yeah.
what what year was that?
So that was all in 2015, going into 2016, and even I had
Okay.
to go to Kirtland, Albuquerque for a little bit, and we were, I think it was that January, February, and it was on New Year's of that day, 15 to 16, that I asked her, really
And
drunk
then
too, by the way, and yeah.
how long until you guys got married after you asked her?
So we got married while I was doing my helicopter training in Albuquerque. It was about was it? I mean, that's 4 months, yeah. At that point, April 9th, yeah,
Okay, so that moves pretty quick.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
you had to work for that first date or but then once you guys were together, that now would you say that because you were serving or in that culture, maybe things like that do move quickly because there's that impending you're leaving, things need to kind of I don't you know what I'm trying to say? Whereas for
Yeah.
civilians, like we can take a year or two to plan the wedding, da da da. But there is more of like that life on the line
Little
vibe, I
urgency.
guess. Urgency. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I would say urgency and definitely insurance too. Like the TRICARE,
Yes.
because where are we at April, right? And she tells me very early, maybe even on Fool's Day, if I remember right, just to mess with me. But she was really pregnant, so it was like
Okay.
okay, and then so April 9th, what it was I found a wedding place in Albuquerque, and this reverend, I was like, hey man, here's $200 to marry us. We need TRICARE. So you know,
Yes. Yes. That
yeah,
makes
and
sense. That
That's
makes
but
awesome.
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
I love
but
it.
what that solidified though is that I know she's in this for a long because she's coming. After I get done with training, I'm going to Moody, which is in Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia. There, so yeah, so I knew she was coming. We'd already planned on that anyways, but I knew this was the guarantee. As messed up as that sounds, but I was very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and you said you have a daughter, correct?
I do. Yeah, her name's Sullivan, and basically, we knew that because my wife's Native American, and I'm at least half Scott Irish, right? To where like I knew that she may have dark eyes, right? And so in the old Gaelic or Irish language, Sullivan means dark eyes or brown eyes.
Oh,
So
okay.
took a
I didn't
gamble
know
there.
that.
Yep,
And was she born with dark eyes?
she was. Yep, yeah, light
Okay.
brown. Yeah.
Light brown. So
That's cool.
were you able to request that you were home during the time that your wife was expected to give birth, or was that kind of like you didn't
Man,
know?
so I when I was at Moody, I remember I flew up until like the basically the water's about to pop type thing,
Mm.
and what it was I was even scheduled for a flight to train there at Moody, and then the water broke that morning, so it was a later flight, and I was able to call them, hey, my wife's having a baby, and they're really good about that, and
Yeah.
and they want you're not gonna, especially right in that moment, you're not gonna deploy, you're not gonna do anything but take care of your family and your baby.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you were able to be there?
Yeah, I was there for the birth and everything like that, and I want to say back then it was like 30 or 60 days of some form of paternity leave.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. And then when was she born?
She was born November 21st of was that 2016? Yep.
2016. So you're
Yep.
in with the Jolly Greens. Like that's
Yep.
that time, right? Because
Yep.
that didn't end till when?
So that ended October of 2019 is when I finally left
Okay.
and then came back to New Mexico for my sunset tour, was what we call it. You do 2 3 years and retire. So like my case, what, 2.4 or something.
Okay, so you said you went to Georgia,
Yep.
and then you're still serving, but then you went back. Did she stay in Georgia the whole time you were with the Jolly Greens?
Yeah. She stayed in Georgia, and then that's where I had those two East Africa deployments I was telling you about,
Okay.
and then all that was in that time frame. Was that 20? Would that end in 2019? Yeah. So and then I
And
came
so
back
Lon, I
then,
have
to
a question.
okay.
yeah.
I'm glad you came back to the East Africa thing. I didn't want to break the flow, but I was curious, what was going on there? What was that that exercise?
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know, and I probably couldn't say if I did, but it was. I know it was. Usually with those Green Berets, it's a foreign internal defense type mission.
Mhm.
And it could be something what we call key leadership engagements, where they meet with like the tribal leader or the leader of that area. And so on and so forth, and but yeah, something like that. I would assume so.
Yeah. Okay.
So you get to 2019. Did you make the decision, or was that just the natural end of that service with the Jolly Greens, or did you decide to not re-up? Is that, if I'm using the words correctly?
So I re-upped enough to get me till like 2021 because I wanted to at least get my 20 in, and to get
Mhm.
my retirement benefits. And I was going through a lot, and my drinking was starting to really escalate, and I'd had a injury where on the one of the trips we were doing some basically currencies. I was doing a hoist. Long story short, I tore my pectoral major, real nasty tear, and
Mm.
it took me forever to get back to flying status. And then when I did, I'm like, man, like I want to go back to gunships. This helicopter stuff's a young man's game. I want to get back to what I was sort of raised in, the gunship community. And I knew like she wanted to be near her family in New Mexico, and this was a lot closer than the East Coast, right? And so I went back and we talked about it, and I basically said, okay, I'll do till at least 2020, and then I deployed for my last time to Al Asad, Iraq in 2020, and it was on my 20th year mark, man. Believe it or not, July 18th of 2020, I was in country there, and I wanted to do that for some reason I can't really explain, but maybe it's pride or whatever you want to call that. And we do like this, I don't know, 90 days of a whole lot of nothing, to be honest with you. It was a completely different war than what I remember, right? And my sense of purpose was I could see the endings there, right? I already at 20. I'm in that window where you can what they call hit the button, and then we may have shot once in 90 days, but it wasn't nothing significant to what it used to be. And that, in a way, I wasn't over myself. I was like, man, like this used to be so relevant, and I got back and I was like, you know what, man, like I don't want to do this anymore. And I hit the retirement button. And once you hit that retirement button, that's it, unless you make rank, etc. But um, I go through this phase of where like same sort of this loss of identity was really building up on me, man. And you're doing all these things, you're getting all your paperwork ready to get out, and you get to this point to where you're getting your infamous DD-214, this blanket that says, hey, this paperwork that says, hey, I served my country honorably for 21 years and some change, like, or it will be by then. You can retire honorably, right, and all the benefits that come with that, etc. And then you're in this office type space scenario, this 9 to 5 type place, and you're in there with these personnelists. And no offense, those guys do an awesome job, and you're in uniform, and you realize like this isn't going to last long. This uniform, right? This cloth, and you walk out that door, and there's no door handle on the other end of that door, so you can walk out this machine, you can walk out this thing, right? But you can never truly get back in. It was sort of like this opposite of Hotel California type moment,
Yeah.
to where like everything, I was like all of that for this is what sort of popped in my head. Very
Yeah.
selfish thought on my part, And so I used that as an excuse to what was a pint on the weekend drinking habit to turn into a pint a night at least, man, with sleeping pills, you name it, to go to sleep. Really
Mm.
abusing myself, and my wife recognized that, and she's like, it's either the bottle or me and your daughter. And so thank God I chose them. So that was I mean, that was a good, what's that, a good almost year at that point. I mean, it escalates, and it keeps going into that, and then that 8 to 12 month mark is when finally, I get to that point where she's like, get help, and that's when I started doing the prolonged exposure treatment therapy with one of those POTF people I told you about.
Okay, so that's when you reached out for help
Yeah,
from the military where they offer guidance and counseling and
yeah.
therapy?
Yeah, and at that point, technically I'm still in. I'm within that year, right? So I'm still in,
Mm.
and TRICARE, everything that comes with that. And I had a civilian SOCOM implag, so she was really cool. And I went in there with a chip on my shoulder, and I knew I had a problem. I knew I was going down the gutter, and I was like, what do you know about this and that, something like that, me being wise. And she's like, she gave me the cliche analogy. Well, you wouldn't ask your dentist to fix your car, right? I was like, okay, I get it. I'll try it, and prolonged
Yeah.
exposure therapy, what you're doing, just like we're doing now, you're just conversing back and forth, right? And you get to a point where you write it out, and then they time you saying it without writing it out. So they're getting back to the root cause of that trauma, which in my case was that castovac mission, I was telling you about. And
Yes.
they peel back that onion, man. And I was doing stupid things. Like I was timing myself going to work, and they have a really good way of sort of explaining why you're doing certain things with that mindset. Because, like you said, I was constraining myself, right, to a time
Yeah.
frame, to a timeline, to thinking that
Yeah.
someone's life was on the line, and
Yes.
it just little things like that, and they're basically getting you comfortable again, being uncomfortable, right? And she was able to get me the help, and with that, like, there's the ADAP program, which is like AA, if you will, while you're in the Air Force and stuff like that. And then, right before I was out, they wrote me a letter for continued help with the VA. And so I got the same sort of stuff when I went to the VA, right when I left. So
So during that years, after you retired and all this was going on, were you working at all?
yeah, yeah, I was just doing like BS, like office work and like planning
Just
and stuff
desk
like that.
job.
It wasn't
Okay.
nothing,
Yeah.
But it was
out
still with the
processing. Yeah,
it was still with the
yeah,
Air Force, but it was a desk job. Okay. So
yeah,
I find it interesting when you said she helped you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but it's almost the opposite of how they got you comfortable with being uncomfortable when you started in the military, because that was getting you comfortable with being uncomfortable under high stress situations.
right,
Now, as you're exiting, she's helping you get comfortable being uncomfortable with calm, with
yeah,
life
It's
being
a
content.
deprogramming.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's two different feelings of uncomfortableness at opposite ends of the spectrum. It seems like that should be mandatory almost for everyone who's retiring from the military. There everyone should receive that, it seems.
I think so. Yeah, and I've never really heard it put that way, and I'm so glad you did. That's an awesome way of looking at that. They're bringing you in, and then in a way, just sort of letting you go, but making sure you're right before they let you go.
Yeah, it
Well,
could bring you
Yeah,
back down. Like they got
yeah,
you up, they got to bring you back down. They,
yeah, man.
I mean, mentally, your nervous system, also because your cortisol was probably just off the charts during that whole time because
Oh
you're under
yeah,
high stress, high stress.
yeah,
Well, physiologically, your body gets addicted to that. So it's almost like going through withdrawal as you're coming down into normal civilian life. Your cortisol is going to start to come down. That's shocking too, because even
oh
when you were
yeah,
home for those 90 days, you're still, like, on hypervigilance to
but
some degree,
it's
because you're leaving in 90 days, and you have to kinda
yeah.
hold that state. I'm sorry, go
no,
ahead.
I'm just thinking, I have a feeling it's easier to be it was probably easier those 90 days deployed are easier than the 90 days at home. Because once that honeymoon week is over, like you described, now you're doing all this domestic stuff, and it's not easy, right? It's
Oh yeah,
almost
yeah,
easier to be deployed because not I'm gonna uh, uh,
Simplify it.
oversimplify, but you're almost chilling and hanging out with your brothers and your sisters,
yeah,
ready to go, but
yeah,
you've got a lot of downtime and it's kind of boxed in. There's not a whole lot of decision making. You're just ready to go. You're ready to pounce. You come home, it's like, all right, you've got responsibilities, right? It's
yeah,
got to
yeah,
mow the lawn, you got to get
yeah,
groceries, get the kids in bed, wake up on time, all that stuff.
And support your wife,
Support your wife, the whole thing.
reconnect with
Yeah.
your wife, I
oh
mean,
yeah,
it's probably like reconnecting again, and I mean, that all
yeah.
takes effort. you know?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good way. Like I was talking about earlier, like the routine part of being downrange. Really, I guess is what I'm trying to say is like just the I've normalized it. This was my normal. This was
Yeah.
what I can expect to what's going to happen. And then the unexpected happens every now and then, and I miss that. I don't know if it's a sense of relevance or just the camaraderie or both.
Hmm.
That was
And
my
also
normal.
maybe the dopamine hit too, just from the adrenaline bursts,
Oh
whatever
yeah,
that is. Um,
Well, real quick, then you throw in the domestic life, and you're now allowed to have some booze, which
oh
lets
yeah,
you tune out, type of thing. Which I could see that spiraling, what you're describing, right?
yeah,
But it gets
yeah,
real complex compared to
so
more of a
complex.
box. Yeah,
With
yeah.
mental health and
yeah.
everything. I mean, and I find it interesting that they had you write stuff down and
Yeah.
then they had you say it to
Yeah.
get to the root of what's going on. So, how long did you continue with that therapy? Because you said she signed off for you to continue with the VA, right?
Yeah, yeah, they at least wrote me a memorandum because it gets weird because you don't have a VA what they call rating, a disability rating yet, and I'm seeking help or I'm getting help up into that very last the one I can, and multiple times. I don't even know how many times I saw her, but we really left on great terms too with this lady and really awesome person. And then she wrote me the memorandum, and then I had to give that to when they do your psyche eval when you get out, which was
Hmm.
I think that guy was in like Lubbock, Texas, and I handed him that, and there at that point you don't know what you're going to get. You don't even know if they're going to give you 10%. I know a lot of people shoot for the 100%, but you at least want a number to where you can get free help, with the VA, and that's pretty much what that insured me, at least what I think did. And then, yeah, man, right when I just hit the ground running, right in Amarillo, Texas, I'd have to drive there to the behavioral health people, and it was the same sort of thing. But at that point, like I wasn't on meds until I went to the VA, and that's when I got on the bupropion, talk about dopamine type stuff, right? And then um, the Prozac and the Trazodone, you name it, I'm on it. But what what I do know about that stuff is like it holds me accountable with drinking too. Is like I know if I drink on that stuff that it ain't gonna be good. Like you have a
Mhm.
seizure. So there is that fear of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as far as like that is what I was have normalized, man, was the downrange life and that sense of relevance. In a way too, like I had to get over myself, man. Like hey, this was a point in my life where I had a job, did it. Now it's over. It's time to get out and new uh, beautiful things, and the new mission being the best dad I could be, the best husband I could be. That's what counts now, right? That's finding those exciting moments in those calm, man. That's got me a long way.
But that's got to be such, because you're right. That is truly the meaning, right, of
Yeah,
everything. But you put nation and brothers and everyone first for so long under such high stress circumstances. It's completely understandable that you would need help transitioning into even understanding that that was important and that was so important to our country and to everyone, but that this is also just as important. And it's okay now that your wife and your child can be at that same level of importance, but there has to be help getting there. I mean,
yeah,
I don't see how anyone can be expected to get to that from this point to this point without
Well,
support. It's almost
that's
impossible, I
why
would think.
that's just reason million, the 500 million reasons of Vietnam being such a travesty, right?
Oh,
Because there was
God.
no transition.
yeah,
And
It
at
was
least the
worse than
VA,
that.
I think, has evolved. I have a friend who is a Marine who is in Afghanistan and that kind of thing. And there's a transition back to civilian life. I think that's better now. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's better than what it was
oh yeah,
back in Vietnam, right? At least you got
yeah,
help and guidance.
yeah. I would say it's like night and day from
Yeah.
between now and Vietnam. Honestly, like we haven't made. I tell guys, there's all these resources we have available to
Mhm.
use them. And like if someone's afraid, like, and getting help's contagious. I've noticed that. And like if some of your friends, we talk about the 22 a day and the suicide all the time, right?
Yeah.
But again, like I'm either my brother's keeper or I'm not. And so like, and I always tell people have those four quarters over those 100 penny. Those four people that will, when you get out, that will answer that phone, and you will for them without a doubt, like no questions asked, and you'll get them the help they needed. And it's honestly been overwhelming, sort of with emails, the texts, even the reviews on Amazon for some people I used to fly with, and you see this similar struggle with all this stuff, And when they get help because of your words, man, you see how far your words travel. That's a blessing, man. If one person gets help from reading that book, then to me that's a win, you know. And I think again, you know, we're all very normal men and women doing these very uncommon, unnatural things. It's not if, it's when you need to take that tactical knee and get help. And it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to do nothing about it, in my opinion. And we are sort of all or nothing type of people. If you think about it, like, you know, like someone asked me, like, can you go having 3 drinks to be social? And they know the answer to that question. I definitely know the answer to that question. My wife does. I can't do that. I'm not. It's all or nothing. This opens up this gate of where I'm going to wake up and I'm going to ask those 2 very embarrassing questions: who do I owe money to, and who do I need to apologize to? You know, and often it was my wife. You know.
So it's interesting as far as the brotherhood, because what it seems like what you're alluding to, at least there's a change in that the brotherhood extends past deployment, or at least it's starting to, where
Oh yeah.
you guys are talking about mental health. It's okay to say I need help. It's okay to say I'm not okay. And supporting each other. Would you say that's a relatively new phenomenon in the military life, that talking about mental health is way more normalized now than ever?
I would say it's the best it's been, is the way I would put that. Because we've, within the last 5 to 7 years, something like that. You know, when these programs started happening, and you realize that the stigma is coming down. You know, and because and also you have these leaders, right, or leaders slash management type positions, and not just in the military, anywhere, you know. And I think when you see those people go get help, that's how it says, okay, this is, I can get help, you know. And it becomes contagious. And I've noticed too, like getting someone's like, hey, like how's it going, man, versus hey, how are you really doing, man. There's a different way to ask that question and mean it, you know. And basically when you remove that stigma, then as a society, we're better, man. You know, and I think that mental health should be. I know we just passed May, that was Mental Health Month, but it should be advertised on every billboard that it's okay to get help, and you'll realize that helping is healing a lot of times. You know.
100%. 100%. So you said you went to Amarillo, Texas to continue therapy, and you were able to get meds. Was that coming from New Mexico to Texas? You were having to travel from
Yeah.
to do
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I would have to drive there. It's about what, 2 hours or so, and then but they
Oh,
would reimburse your you have like almost like a travel voucher type thing. They'd reimburse your gas and stuff
okay.
like that, and then they would mail your meds, which that's the hard part, the tricky part sometimes, you know.
Right. Okay, so and that was what, like 2021 you said? Around?
Yes, I retired 1 December of 21, you know, and then I was in therapy within the next year, you know, January of 23. So
Okay. Go
I have
ahead.
a question on the disability rating. There's kind of a stigma with that too, right? Is that, or there used to be, is that shifted? It feels like maybe you guys wouldn't want to get a high rating, right? And but now it's okay. Go for it. Go for the 100% type of thing, right?
yeah, that is a hot, really hot topic right now. A lot of stuff with that, but you know, the VA math, like I've tried to understand it, man, to like why they give certain things for certain things, and
Mhm.
and the way I sort of looked at it, man, is like, hey, like this is my service, right? These are my problems that I have. This is what they are. I put them on paper, and that was the result, you know. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to go out of my way to try to change that. First, I don't want to change it, you know. Second, like I just couldn't see myself doing that, you know. And but if you know you served your country, and like a problem now that's not manifesting, it'll manifest when you least want it to,
Yeah.
with health, right? We all know that. That's how it is. So I tell people, claim what you think that you deserve, man, and just don't hold back, you know.
You know, it's and that's if my friend was going through that. And he's like, I don't. It's got like a knee or whatever it is, foot or ankle. And I'm like, bro, you went and did something for the rest of us. You just be honest, or and see where how it works out. Don't feel any guilt. You're doing stuff that you protected our lifestyle here. Our way of life is something you did. You now have a knee ache. You got to go for it.
Yeah.
I
Oh
would
yeah.
say, as a
Yeah.
civilian in my
Yeah.
shoes, sitting here, you guys deserve everything.
Everything.
You should get 100% forever, even if you don't have any, ailments. And I think I would speak for a lot of people here, personally.
100%.
Oh yeah.
100%. Yeah, and I
And,
think
and,
we talked about more.
yeah, yeah, and we appreciate that, you know, and the people that do understand that the wear and tear of not just the body of the mind, you know, and
Yeah.
appreciate you guys, and honestly just putting that message forward, you know, and hopefully guys don't hold back when they put in for those benefits that they earned, you know.
I pay taxes. I'm glad to pay taxes for this
Yeah. Yeah. I wish we could
Yeah.
decide where it all goes. To go back real quick, how did becoming a father change you?
Oh man, I tell people I've been called many things, many different call signs. I love saying this, and you aerial gunner. One of my rescue call sign was Uncle Tito, which you can imagine how I got that because I was that drunk guy, right?
Ah,
All these different names and special missions aviator. But the best one I ever had was when my daughter called me dad. So that's it.
yeah. And would you say, besides your wife, she was motivation in you getting help?
That is my everything. Yep,
Yeah.
100%.
Are
Yeah.
you guys all still together? You still
Yeah,
married?
yeah. We're still married, and right now, my actually wife's taking a course up in Albuquerque right now. So her and my daughter are up there, and they're visiting the in-laws and stuff like that. So
Congratulations, man, on
yeah.
making
thank you.
that decision and having that awareness, and I'm really happy for you. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. It saved my life, and I appreciate it. So and
Yeah,
thank
man, that's
you.
cool.
Your guys' platform's awesome, and I appreciate you getting people on to get these messages out. And that's the thing about storytelling. It could be a book, it could be a podcast. And I think it's important if you have words in your heart, bleed them on the page, man. And with writing, I'm not this famous author, probably never will be. Right? I have this small little book called Moonchild, right? But at the end of the day, like if we don't tell these stories, those stories die in the sand. So
Yeah.
so get them out
Absolutely.
there. So
So
every
when
veteran, every person has a story.
absolutely when so we're at 2023. So when did you start writing Moonchild? Because were you still working a desk job for the military during this whole time when you were going to Amarillo and living in New Mexico during the early 2020s?
No, no. So I was in till 1 December of 21, and then when I did my VA thing, got my rating, started getting help in January. But I had started actually within 2 weeks of actually like my last day in the Air Force. What is that? November 15th or something like that. Someone had quit a job here at Canon on the flight simulators, a civilian contractor job, not a GS job, but a civilian contractor, and it just lined up, man. The stars aligned, and I jumped on it. Someone told me about it, and just put my resume in, and sure enough, it worked. I got it, and it's what I like about that, which I started pretty much that day, and then till this day,
Wow.
even now, I still do that job, and then I still get to see some very rare, but some of the same men and women I used to fly with, and get to check
Oh,
on each
that's
other,
cool.
and what I love about it, it keeps me, it gives me a purpose again for my work, my craft, and there's a lot you can learn from flying, and through perseverance, and I tell people, these moments you get to sort of that you've had, you put people in, you realize the bigger picture that what he was saying is like an aircraft takes off against the wind, not with it, right? So you're
Mhm.
going to go through some hard times, some EFEs, malfunctions, my psychological problems, but the point is to always keep flying the aircraft, and you get to sort of I don't know, in your own way, sort of create those scenarios to when they get downrange, or even if it's normal life, these things happen. You like, all right, I've been here, or at least someone's been here. I know what to do.
So you're utilizing your experiences and writing scenarios for the flight simulator?
Yeah, it's basically what it is called a synthetic environment coordinator, which is a fancy way of saying the guy who puts in the emergencies that could come up while flying, the
Right.
threats that could come up, the scenarios, the very like a lot of times there's no like I said like black and white. You operate in the gray over there, right? Especially in USOCOM, you can imagine, and it's about basically choosing life or death, safe or unsafe, and you basically get them again. I don't know why I keep saying this, but comfortable being uncomfortable, but like you're getting them to that point to when it happens, you're like, you know what, I've been here, let's do this, and you see the fruits of that labor every now and then. They'll tell you about it.
You're absolutely utilizing your experience serving in what you do now. There's no question because like you're basically it is nuanced, right? It's so
Oh yeah,
nuanced. And unless you've done it, there's things you can probably put into a scenario no one would know unless they'd been there. And that
oh
could
yeah.
be life-saving for the people that are, I assume, being trained in these flight simulators, right?
Yeah, it's all pilots and co-pilots and what we call weapons systems officer, and then combat systems officers, aerial gunners, or SMOs as they call us, load masters. So all the crew positions, and you get to bring your experiences, and other guys I used to work with that work with me. They got some experiences too, and it's just mind blowing, to see all this collective minds come together and make this thing happen, of air power.
When
You're still doing it for the greater good. That's amazing. I mean, talk about that. There's purpose there for sure. You've just extended what you were doing before in a totally different way, but it's still just as meaningful and is still helping in the same way. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to ask a technical question on the simulator. Is it the when you say, I don't know, maybe you hit a button, say we're doing this exercise, this simulation, and the crew gets in there and it's the same. Is it the same every time, or is the simulator adapting and changes things a little bit, makes it more nuanced, so it's maybe more realistic, not the same?
Yeah. Some of the scenarios are the same, but the beauty of it is there's a lot of different ones, and you can change them on the spot, on the fly, through programs, and it's all virtual reality, man. You can go to
Yeah.
so one day I could, if we wanted to just take off at JFK, we could do that. We've done that. You
Hmm.
can even recreate the Sully mission on like the PC-12 one or something like that. And basically you're in combat, right? You're with the gunship specifically. You're getting them in this situation where like through virtual reality, through these programs we have to build write these scripts and scenarios, and it all reacts like sort of like coding,
Hmm.
and it's step one thing triggers another, etc. And you're basically like, okay, well, like when can we shoot? Right? Can we shoot now? And I hate to say it, but you get them in that worst case scenario that where a bad shoot could happen. That way, because the worst thing in close air support would be fratricide, one of our own guys getting killed, right? Or
Hmm.
even civilian gets killed. Like you don't want that, so you bring them to that level to when they're in that situation, like, okay, let's take a second. What's really going on here before we do something? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Does
That's
does
interesting.
in your work, does it ever trigger you? Because you're kind of replaying scenarios that you were
it,
in.
it definitely brings back some moments because you're having to revisit that in some way, shape, or form. Especially the close air support side of it. But in the end, you've learned like, okay, like I've gotten help. I'm better. I can do this. I want to do this because I want to help somebody be an aviator, a better navigate communicator.
So in a way, it's also part of your healing journey.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of the helping is healing and paying it forward, and I guess and maybe in this way, just paying it backwards.
Absolutely. So you're okay, so you're doing that. So when did you start writing?
So I had my some of the stuff I wrote for my prolonged exposure therapy, and man, what was it? 20. I'd at least had all those notes and everything, and there was this moment to where like when I would have these cravings to drink after I'd got out, right? To where like I'd be like, man, I want to drink so bad. I'm really struggling right now. So I would force myself, 3 a.m. You name it, scribble something on a notepad beside the bed. Wake up in the morning, try to make sense of it all. And I go through this back and forth. And then 2024, I'd starting putting pen to paper. I would say, maybe yeah, towards the end of it there. And then I'd had at least what I thought was enough for a book, right? But it wasn't nowhere, nowhere close. And so I'd reached out on LinkedIn to a war journalist named Holly McKay, a reporter, and she responded like almost instantaneously. It felt like, and I was in Walmart and on LinkedIn texting her and setting up an appointment. And what it was there was this Word document that went back and forth for months, like basically she's like really getting into like hey, what'd you mean by this, and for me to like to quit talking with acronyms because not everybody knows all these military acronyms, little things like that, and
Yeah.
and then really getting into the nitty gritty of the five senses during these situations and when they happen, and there's some funny moments and there's some dark moments, and it's one of the female pilots I used to fly with, I think she put something on there about how like it's the only book that's ever made her laugh and cry within the same hour. So it is a relatively short read, about a 2 hour read. But
Hmm.
yeah, man, it was I would say pen in hand to book in hand, 7 8 months or so, which is relatively fast. But it is again
Yeah.
a short read, and I had a lot of it up here, and that's what she did. She helped me get the hard things to say and give my words teeth in a way.
So how would you how would you sum up Moonchild if somebody said, what is Moonchild about? How would you sum that up?
Yeah, I would say Moonchild. It's basically saying, okay, these are my roots, right? Growing up in Appalachia, and I was born under the full moon, so the moon has a lot of symbology, and the roots part being like this tight knit community, this friends, my family, this the clay that molded me, right? And then it's important to know where you came from, but what's more important is where you're going with your winged part of it. You know what I mean? And it the moon. One of my favorite poems is "Stay Wild, Moonchild" by Rita Clint. If you've ever heard that, and it's just so symbolic. We'd be flying, and the moon was a lighthouse to me. I tell people, you're in this orbit in the darkest, all night, right? So it's easy to get like disoriented. Excuse me. And then, basically, I would say, okay, well, the moon's on this side of the orbit. It would always be a lighthouse and get me. You're here at this time and space. This is the battlefield. This is where you are. This is the moment. You know what I mean? So it was always in a way that lighthouse and this my way home.
And so it's from your beginning through your military service, and the moon from the start to then was kind of your anchor, it sounds like. It held you down a little bit when you would start to
Oh yeah.
drift.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely it would highlight the terrain, for example, right? It would let me know where threats are. So yeah, it was in a way my keeper, right? And if we look at it like that, I've never thought about that, but yeah, it's definitely my lighthouse and my anchor is a good way to put that.
Well, growing up in Appalachia, you don't have a whole lot of light pollution, I would bet. So the moon and the stars and the Milky Way is probably beautiful. Fills the
Oh yeah,
sky.
yeah, it is a beautiful place, and there's if you ever get a chance to take the Great Smoky Mountain Railroad to like the Nantahala Outdoor Center, and they'll tell you there, and there's this river, this huge gorge, and there's these high trees in the mountains, and that you get there about noon, and I want to say Nantahala in Cherokee means land of the noonday sun, which basically like the only time you could ever see the sun is when it's right above
Oh,
you at
that's
noon.
cool. Yeah, cool.
So
So would you say that this book would definitely help anyone who has served, and especially ones who may be struggling with their mental health?
yeah, I would say anybody that's been in these uncommon jobs and first responder, military, that it would definitely it would let you that know that, hey man, like I said, we're very normal men and women doing these very uncommon, unnatural things. That it's okay to get help. And really, I wrote it for two reasons. I would say is to show the rest of America, hey, these things this is what's going on while you're sleeping over there. And the second part, the most important part, is if one person gets help, that's a win.
Absolutely. Did your wife read it?
Oh yeah.
What did she think?
So she started crying. She had read the first version before I'd sent it, to the editor and publisher, and she's like, man, you need to work on this. It was she was a harsh critic, but I'm glad she was, and that's when I got an editor, and yeah, really, really came to fruit, man.
And have your parents read it?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, they
how was the feedback?
they loved it, and I got to go home to do a book signing back at City Lights bookstore in Sylva. It's little on the side of a mountain, it's a little bitty bookstore that has cats in it. If you ever get a chance to go there, you guys love it.
Oh, wow, you got to go do a book signing in your hometown at a
I
local
did, yeah.
bookstore.
It was so awesome. Got to see people I hadn't seen in
You'll
forever. It felt like.
absolutely go through there.
Yeah, we'll go through there,
Yeah.
but how surreal was that to be doing a book signing in your hometown at a local bookstore?
It was emotional, real emotional.
I'm sure. Did you have
Yeah.
friends come
Oh
and
yeah.
attend and
Friends,
everything?
friends I hadn't seen in what 25 years. 26 years, something like that. It was friends, family, people came from all over. It just, those 4 quarters.
It's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And how old is your daughter now?
She's 10 now.
So she's old enough to understand like what's going on as far as you're at a book signing and what a big deal it is. That's cool that
Yeah,
she's old enough to take that in.
yeah. And what I did was I actually put my publisher did this, but he put see if I show her a picture there. Can you guys see that? That's
Let's
the
see.
very
Oh,
that's the
Oh
very
yeah,
yeah.
back page of
There,
it.
there's her light brown eyes.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's
And
cool.
so
Yeah.
obviously we'll put it in the show notes, but everyone can get your book, Amazon, what,
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble, everywhere you could get a book basically.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, and Trademark and Media has its own sort of website there. You go to the country and you click on the flag, and it'll take you to the Amazon link there.
That's wonderful. Now, did you and your dad ever, because he served in the Air Force, you served in the Air Force, did this book open up any conversations that maybe you had never had with him before about anything he maybe had gone through when he served?
Yeah, yeah, and it definitely brought up the conversation of how today there's a lot more awareness with this sort of stuff than there was in during that Vietnam-ish era.
Yeah. Did he serve in Vietnam?
Yeah, so he went to the Philippines and he went to Vietnam for very very short time as a communication sergeant, like a comms guy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know you had written in your questionnaire, choosing better over bitter and the two wolves. What is that reference?
Yeah, so the two wolves to the roots part of my story. So the Cherokee, and this is their thing, not mine, and I don't want to take any credit for it. I want to paraphrase the best I can. So what I've learned about the sort of tie together here. So every man or woman has the two wolves. You have one on each shoulder, right? You have a good wolf and you have a bad wolf. Good wolf giving you these positive motivations to tell you to keep going forward, give positive thoughts. You have a negative wolf, which is tempting you, is getting you to do bad things and to get you not to believe in yourself and your people. And then the one that wins is the one who feeds the most. And towards the my last year, I lost a lung in the Air Force. That's why you sort of hear it's hard to breathe sometimes. I have a paralyzed human diaphragm and all that, in 2020 and all that, you know. And I talked to a pastor. I was feeling sorry for myself, and you know, and he said, "Listen, Anthony," he goes, "life circumstances can make you bitter or better." He's like, "The choice is yours." So you see two ways of looking at that. You know, one I'd got from back home, one I got from a pastor over here. You know, so it's roots and wings. So
Yeah, yeah, that is so interesting. What happened where you lost your lung?
so what I think happened, I don't know for sure. Nobody still really knows, but it was during like COVID and all that, and I had got the second booster, but I think I had COVID when that happened. So I think
Oh,
I got that, and it just overloaded or something, and it got to a point where they didn't know if it was like the phrenic nerve, but what it was you know how your diaphragm goes up and down. My
yeah.
left one was stuck up, and it crushed the lower left lobe of my lung. So it was even walking the stairs, I was like, man, this is so hard right now. So a lot of pulmonary function tests, a lot of sniff tests, a lot of X-rays, and they tried the nebulizer stuff. It didn't help it. So yeah, man, it was just working out, trying to keep what I can.
So you're basically functioning with one lung?
Yeah, 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 and I guess the silver lining is like how your right side lungs you have more space and stuff like that because you have your heart on your left.
Mm.
So I have was that 63% or something like that. They said total lung capacity at one point, but I was able to work on that, and get it up to the low 70s at least. So which
Oh,
is
wow.
yeah.
Okay. So does that affect, like, can you work out still and everything?
Yeah, I still work out, and what I'll do is I'll do the treadmill, and so instead of like just taking off running, I'll get on this incline, basically like 10, and put on 3 miles per hour, and just go, until it's really hard to breathe. I'm sweating a lot, and basically putting that work in to try to just keep what I have. But it's at this point, with the exception of me getting long winded, not it's apparent then, but like I can still do what I want for the most part, like physically.
Is it kind of like a muscle where you need to keep challenging it and
Oh yeah,
utilizing? Okay. And do
yeah,
you do
yeah.
breath work?
No, I tried that the nebulizer stuff, and it just made me feel weird and all that. But I
Mm,
have learned to sort of control my breathing, like like slow, like in through the nose, out through the mouth when I'm working out at least and stuff like
right.
that.
I'll
So
tell you, I wouldn't have known. So just so you know, it
No,
didn't
no,
it didn't
hey,
affect any way that you've come across. So
not at
just
thank
so
all.
you, I
you know.
appreciate
Yeah, we had absolutely no I had no idea.
it.
I did mean to ask you, when you were first serving, did you get your college degree?
So I got my 2 year, just it's called the Community College of the Air Force in aviation operations, and what that is for an enlisted person. Your job, like in my job, it gave me so many college credits already, right? To where I just had to basically do my core classes, if you will,
Okay.
and I was able to get my 2 year degree. And it's sort of a funny story when I had first joined the Air Force, and I'm starting to work on this. Before I could take college, even at I think it was like Goldsboro Community College, something like that. Back then, they made you take a college placement exam. and,
Mm.
and my scores were so low that the lady said something like, "Man, like this is where a fifth grader reads. Like this is where you're at." Pretty much what she said. I don't know how true that
Wow.
was. If she was joking, but I had to do like this book report. And me being me, just like when I would do accelerated reader growing up. I think I watched where like the red fern grows or something. I did a book report, and then I was able to take college. And the irony in all that is that I still read on the fifth grade level, and but somehow got a book out. So I'll take that.
Now you're a
So,
published author. I mean, that
yeah.
just that's amazing. What a great bookend, right? Like
Oh
that's where
yeah.
you started and look where you are now and then everything in between. It's really phenomenal. Did you have any questions before I ask my last question?
I don't know. I got a bunch, but
Yeah,
I just
I had
find
a
you
feeling.
remarkable.
Oh, absolutely.
The
Thank you guys.
the one the one thing I was thinking about earlier was when you said you were over there in, I think it was Afghanistan or maybe East Africa, and it kind of calmed down and you maybe shot once in 90 days. I do think that's a testament to you and your brothers in the military just doing a killer job and eliminating a threat over there and again, I'm so appreciative of you guys. Our lives here are phenomenal because of guys like you who sign up. Because I wouldn't. I don't. It's not in me to do it, right? But man, I so appreciate you guys and you guys doing that for us.
Absolutely.
We appreciate people like you, and I tell without people like you, you guys make it all worthwhile, and that's what you're living the best American lives you can, and you're getting these stories out, and you do it very well, and I've watched a few of your shorts and everything like that, and what was the one the last lady you guys were talking about dementia or something like that, and it brought me back to
Yep.
some memories, and you guys do a really good job of getting these situations in America that need to be talked about out, and you guys make it all worthwhile. Thank you.
I
Oh, well,
appreciate it.
thank you. I mean, it's that means a lot coming from you. But I just to back up what Brian's saying, it- there's so much crap out there in the media.
Yeah.
But boots on the ground, regular people. I don't know anyone who doesn't support the military and isn't in awe of what you guys do and isn't eternally grateful. And we are all raising our children to understand that too. And I think that's so important to our American culture. So just to reaffirm that at least in our where we live and in our world, we love you guys and we're so grateful for everything. The sacrifice, it is sacrifice of your bodies, your mental health, your family sacrifice, your spouses, your children. And we know. It's not just us, like people know.
Well, we
So
don't know because what you can go through is
well,
so
yeah.
horrific,
Right. We don't know
but
no,
we can
but
only imagine,
yeah, but
and then we can try to
we
assimilate it and appreciate it.
and we
But
try to honor it.
yeah, and
You
honor it.
know,
That's a good way to put it.
we have a big flagpole in the front yard and we have we try to do what we can to just say we recognize, I guess. We recognize.
Actually, you'd love this. We put up a 20-foot flagpole. We're ready for the
That's
fourth.
Yep,
awesome.
just in honor of
Oh
the
man, yeah.
250th birthday,
Yeah,
but
You guys
you
send me
know,
some pictures of that and some fireworks. That's awesome.
yeah,
we
yeah. We
will.
will.
We will, but it's so I hope you guys all know that though, because I'm sure
Yeah,
with all the noise it can get lost.
yeah. We do, and we very much appreciate people like yourselves, who understand and who have our back, and it's always nice to know that someone cares and appreciates and understands and nothing that I've done, but the cost of freedom that guys that didn't make it back, and God
Yes.
bless you both, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And God always bless you and your family, please. And please thank your wife. Oh, I meant to ask, what is she getting her degree in?
So she's actually got her biology. She's got her master's in biology now.
Oh, wow.
She teaches here locally. It's seventh grade life science, which is remember we used to do biology. We dissect the frog and all that.
Yeah.
Basically, I think that's what they're calling that, life science or something like that now. But yeah, she
Yeah.
loves it. And she's really doing good. And I was there for her evaluation because ironically another practical, I got to observe my wife teaching. Yeah, and it was good to be there and just to see just a blessing, the rock she's been.
Well, she's a middle school teacher. That's a special person to deal with that age.
Yeah,
I'm really
yeah,
happy.
man.
I don't know. That might compare to you serving over in Afghanistan
Yeah, right.
someday.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's a crazy age.
It's eye opening. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What were you
I
gonna
was just
say?
gonna say I'm real happy for you that she gave you the ultimatum. You made the right choice, and you're still working through it. It's awesome. It's
Oh yeah,
real
Well, you're
happy
an,
for you.
an
constant
inspiration
Yeah,
for sure.
constant work in progress, and we only landed takeoff again.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's marriage, right? I tell
Oh
people
yeah,
there's good days, good weeks, good years, bad years. That's marriage. And
oh yeah,
we've been together almost 33 years or something. And there were times I've said there's been bad years, and people look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, that's marriage. And I
oh yeah,
think what it really comes down to is friendship. And if you have that friendship as a foundation, you can get through anything.
oh yeah.
So, and you guys have gotten through a lot.
Oh yeah, and I think even my dad told me this because he's been just like you guys, and it's so unheard of this day and age. And 50 something was I don't know how many years, a long time now.
Wow.
And him
Wow.
and my mom, and I asked him what the key was, and he was like, if I could sum it up in 2 words, he was like, compromise and respect. So
Yes.
always try to think of those 2 words.
So true. Now, was the last time you were home was for your book signing?
So that was July of what last year, and then I went home to I went to basically a Panthers game and then to a Hornets game, which was when was that? I'm thinking Hornets game. Was that February, March time frame? Yeah.
So do you go home fairly regularly, like a
I
couple?
do now, but there was a long time where I didn't, from just the way it
Yeah,
worked out and stuff. But yeah,
Well,
yeah.
there's no pro sports in New Mexico,
yeah,
which is
you're right about that. Yeah,
yeah. In the college, the football teams, they've had success in basketball years and years ago, I think, but I don't think they do too well in football.
yeah, yeah. We didn't break 500 last year, but we still made the playoffs. And I was at the game where Charlotte played Tampa Bay, and I went all out, man. I went on Ticketmaster, and I got the closest seats I could afford anyway, and it was it was eye opening how different it is being in that arena, and it's just
Oh
just to
yeah.
feel that vibe, of that game and everything was that was a dopamine release in itself, just being there for that.
In Tampa or up in
No,
Charlotte?
so it was the one where they played in Charlotte, and I know they played
Okay.
not too long after that Tampa again in Tampa.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Billy Strings?
I know that name. What is this?
So he's like bluegrass. You have to check him
He's
out.
well,
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so Doc Watson's from the hills of North Carolina, I think, right? And Billy's not, I don't know, idol, but he plays a lot of Doc Watson songs, huge
Yeah.
influence. So he's bluegrass and other
And
things,
rock,
but
like
and rock, yeah.
bluegrass rock, but you should check out Billy
He'll
Strings.
go to Asheville a bit, Nashville,
Yeah,
plays
I'll
that
check that
that
out.
area.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
I'm sure that you have friends or family
Oh yeah.
who know about Billy Strings. I know Brian's gonna grab his sticker. Brian's obsessed with Billy Strings. So
There you
we
go.
try to see him, but
Awesome.
he definitely has been influenced heavily by your air where you came from. So, okay, do you have any more
No, I'm
questions?
good.
Okay. So my last question is always, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I see myself just constantly just being a work in progress. Hopefully with a couple other projects out. That possibly coming out soon. But yeah, that and hopefully with another book. So
Okay, I think that's wonderful,
Yeah.
and to keep on the path that you're on, and keep being an inspiration, like you said, not just for people who serve, but first responders, anyone who finds themselves, healthcare workers, especially
oh yeah,
ER,
oh yeah,
emergency medicine, especially.
Ordinary people doing
Doing,
extraordinary jobs.
yeah,
oh yeah.
absolutely. So you're such an example of that, and the fact that you're using your voice to the degree where you wrote a book that can reach masses and help them. Um, it's just such a testament to your healing journey too, just how far you've come. And also what you do for a living, you continue to help people. So I mean, I don't have enough words to even bring light to how impressed I am by you. And I know that sounds so trite, but I'm impressed by just the fact of what you did for our country. But then to come out and acknowledge, hey, I'm struggling here with your wife's help, obviously. Um, and to be open to therapy, and to be open to saving yourself. And then to take that and expand it to help others. It's just phenomenal. And I really, really hope more people who serve hear your story and read your book, because it's so needed. And people, like firemen, policemen, and people who are under such high stress jobs. We can't thank you enough for coming on and being so open and sharing your story with us, but with our listeners, because I know it's going to help people, and that's the ultimate goal with why we do what we do. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if I could sum it up, and talk about getting better and everything, try to get better every day. The other day I saw Viola Davis. She gets on stage and she gets this award, and rightfully so, right? And she says that there's a quote that goes, "The very definition of hell is your last day on earth. The person you became is the person you could have become." So if you want something, go get it, and don't ever settle for just not being the best version of yourself. If that makes sense. So.
Absolutely, absolutely.
One last
Yeah.
thing is what you were saying. I have a friend we've talked about doing like a leadership type of what is leadership, and I think you're personifying leadership in your lifestyle and the decisions you've made and um, find it interesting. It's not the quote unquote traditional leadership, but it's leadership. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think empathy goes a long way in leadership. I've noticed that from the great ones, right? Like, if you'll realize real quick when you have a leader, someone in that spot, if they have empathy, and if
Hmm.
they have empathy, there's mutual respect there is what that tells me. And empathy is the cornerstone of trust, as we all know. So you definitely, that's what a great leader is very empathetic, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you had talked about if leaders show that they're getting help, then it will encourage others to search it out.
Yeah.
And you are one of those leaders doing that.
That's what
So
made me think of it, is
just
your ability to have the humility and the grace to say, I'm not work. It's not working real. I need help. I need help. I want to
Yeah.
get help. That's leadership in that, in a very unconventional sense.
and it gives others the
Awesome.
Yeah.
permission to
Makes it okay.
search for help
Thank you.
and to help them be comfortable with being uncomfortable in the calm,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
So again,
Thank you
thank you.
guys. It's been a real privilege and honor to be here. And this was a good one. This one just, I don't say this often, but this one felt right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for entrusting us
Yeah.
with your story. So, and for our listeners, Anthony Dyer, the book is Moonchild. We'll have in our notes everywhere you can find him, where you can find Moonchild, and you can leave any questions or comments on the socials, and he'll see them. And as always, if you have any questions or comments for us, please leave them. We love to hear from you. And again, thank you,
Yeah.
Anthony, for
Thank you.
your time
Thank you
and your
guys.
story. No, it means so much. And this is actually going to be released either right before or right after the 4th, and I feel that
Awesome.
that's so perfect. So
Thank you guys.
I the timing is just, it wasn't planned that way, but it's
Now we
absolutely
got to
perfect.
make it happen.
Well, no, it will happen. Hey, I wore my shirt. It's going to
Yeah.
happen.
I love it.
So thank
Thank
you
you
again.
guys.
Thank you. And thank
Yeah.
you to
Thank
our
you.
listeners, and we will see you next time. Bye.